Hi, my name's Joe.
And I'm Mike.
And you're listening to How Many Fingers Am I Holding Up? The podcast. And this week we'll be reviewing DC's The Avengers.
No, that's Marvel.
Marvel's The Avengers.
No, we're reviewing Justice League.
Are you sure?
Actually, no.
Hey everyone, and welcome to How Many Fingers Am I Holding Up? Featuring two guys getting stewed and reviewing movies in a weekly podcast form.
And thank you to my good friend Nicole Ialeggio on Facebook. I'm sorry if I butchered your last name. I have not pronounced it since you've been married, Nicole. You'll always be Nicole Morelli to me, but thank you for that synonym. If you have any further synonym suggestions, you can hit us up on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Tumblr, email, Gmail, wherever podcasts are promoted.
You should have never got married, Nicole.
It was a mistake, because now Mike can't pronounce it.
Now Mike can't pronounce their name.
But let us delay no further. Betwixt us, for the first time, Shane Johnson, associate producer of Less Than Three.
Am I always going to be that? That's just how I'm always.
Yes.
And also sometimes the guitarist and lead vocalist for The Few and the Far. But most importantly, the associate producer for Less Than Three. Shane generously donated to our Kickstarter for that film and helped us follow our dreams.
Yeah.
So thank you, Shane.
And it was one of the few to receive the title of
Associate producer.
Along
with my mom. And some random guy that we still have never met or talked to.
Yeah. And I think Sean McNair.
Paul Hoffman, Sean McNair, Shane Johnson, and Chris Brenchley. Thanks, Chris, whoever you are.
He literally lived in LA too. He was like, I think these kids got what it takes. And then he saw the movie. He's like, these kids don't have what it takes.
I wasted $100. Oh, boy. But, yeah, Shane...
Too true.
Shane plays in The Few and the Far, which, how would you describe it? Folk rock? Rock folk?
Let's just call it
Rocky
folk
rock.
Let's just, maybe even just rock. Just narrow it down.
Rock with some acoustic guitars thrown in there. But it's real good. You have an album that just came out recently.
Yeah, Blurred, the Blurred EP.
Blurred EP that's on Spotify and all that good stuff.
Tinder, Bumble. Anywhere on the internet.
Swipe right to the Blurred,
right
the Blurred
on
album.
It's just a baby blowing out a candle.
Yeah, I'd fuck that baby.
But we, as Red Torch Media, did the lyric video for Blurred, and then we have also worked on the Spoons video, which is going to be coming out real soon.
Soon to be released.
Hopefully. So stay tuned for that. And, of course, go check out The Few and the Far. Where can they find you guys? What are your links?
It is facebook.com/thefewandfarnj. You can, I think on Twitter, it's just The Few and Far. Or Few and Far, maybe. I actually don't know off the top of my head. Just type in The Few and Far, will probably come
Google
up.
is your friend. You'll find it out.
Yeah, just Google it. That's the main thing.
But definitely check it out. We've heard the songs many times because we've been working on the videos, but they're good songs to edit to because they play well with repetition.
Oh, definitely.
Good music. I didn't hate it after listening to it 300 times, which is the sign of a good song.
That's the best compliment you could possibly get, you know?
We asked him to come on the podcast after working on the stuff.
So it wasn't that bad.
It wasn't that bad. So definitely go check that out. But this week we're drinking Miami Vice from the MIA Beer Company, which I bought exclusively for just this amazing can, which is like cotton candy. Blue and pink.
Just neon.
Miami neon looking colors. Real dope. Crack this bad boy open.
I don't know if you guys heard that. It's Miami Weiss.
But you pronounce it
with
Vice.
a W.
You pronounce it Vice.
Oh, really?
We're in America now.
I didn't know that. I thought it was Weiss.
It's Hefeweizen is how you pronounce.
Yeah.
It's a W, but
I
you
didn't
pronounce it
realize
in
was
German. You pronounce the
German.
W as V. Yeah.
Yeah.
Why? Where
Well,
does
it's Belgian technically, I think, but I don't know if the rules still apply or something. Or
I guess I'm thinking of more of like a German heritage where like it's like wise, like Weiss, or what is
No,
the...
they always say V's for W's.
Really? Maybe
Not
that's
always,
maybe
but-
that's just more of an Americanized, like kind of like anybody like. I'm trying to think of like famous actors whose last name is like Weiss. Like, should that have actually been pronounced
possibly, yeah.
Weiss?
But I'm
Yeah,
not sure. I
some-
can't think of anyone
okay.
whose
But
last
you know,
name
names
was
just
Weiss.
get Americanized. Like Benet is people just say
Mhm.
Bennett. Oh, it's Joe Bennett or whatever.
Yeah.
You know, you just kind of Americanized it. So
I only know that because my brother is a choir teacher, so he like they have to study like pronunciations for all the
Edelweiss.
different
Mhm.
languages
yeah.
because they have to, you're singing French, you're singing German, you're singing whatever. So that was
Mm-hmm.
something he studied in college, and he would always correct me. And he was the first one that was like, "Yeah, it's Hefeweizen." I know that
Okay.
because we
I was
any
thinking-
W in German is a V.
There's a lot of different Weiss. I think in the Jewish community too, like Weiss something, unless I'm mistaken, like Rachel Weisz.
I think
or
she might
something.
actually supposed to be Rachel
As
Weisz.
Weiss. Okay. Interesting. Cool.
Mhm.
All right. Well,
The more
learn
you know.
something every day.
Yeah.
No, and it would make sense because the sort of Jewish is, I mean, a lot of that is from Germany and
Mhm.
everything too. All right.
This is a weird Hefeweizen though. There's
It's not bad.
some kind of
I haven't tried it yet.
strange fruit there.
I've just been trying to. I've just been going back in my brain of just every time I've mispronounced twice now.
It's like almost starting to go towards like the sour. It's got like a tart flavor in
It
there.
kind of tastes like
Not
it
really
looks.
That is
citrusy, but
not
tart.
how I expected it to taste.
Not at all,
When
no.
you hear of a Hefeweizen, it's you think I always thought I don't know. I got like this different
Tastes like
kind
a-
of. It
tastes
doesn't
like
taste German. This tastes like it was from Miami, I guess.
Tastes like
It fits the can, the taste. I
Yeah.
have to say, but not the label of Hefeweizen.
It's like
Tastes like
There's
tropical.
there's no like. Usually a can will have some kind of like, here's what we did. Like, there's fig or there's nut or.
Tastes like a Christmas fruit cake,
Whatever.
honestly.
It starts to taste like almost like a ghost or like a tart sour beer. Like it's like starting to lean towards a sour beer to me.
I'm also not insane. If you look at our third episode from this, we've been swatting at a fly. I've been swatting at a fly. This in an episode.
Just have to reintroduce
Yeah,
that
yeah.
concept every
If-
episode.
If you're watching the video, you'll know that I'm swatting at a fly, and I'm not just like.
You guys see the demons in this room?
Just like practicing Shakespeare. Just
Interesting though. Not
Anyway.
at all what I expected.
Can is better than the taste.
Yeah, definitely.
Mm.
I'm like not a fan.
But sponsor us anyway, MIA Beer Company,
Where are they located?
Miami.
probably, hopefully
Really,
Miami.
Miami?
MIA.
If I had to
MIA
guess.
and M.
Okay. They're not missing in action.
They fly like paper and get high like planes, or vice versa. I don't know.
Yeah.
I was listening to Views last night, so all I can think of is just MIA and MI. What is that song? The With You. It's
Mhm.
after Redemption
Yeah.
on Views.
Mhm.
Plug for Drake there. Check him out.
I was listening to. Oh no, I wasn't. I was listening to something else. Forget it. Oh no, maybe it was Views. I don't know. Fuck it. I'm going
He is going
back
insane.
and forth. Yeah. Uh-huh. I.
Plot twist. I have actually gone insane.
Plot twist. I am insane. This new development on how many fingers am I holding up? The podcast. This is only the second episode.
Stay
Ladies
tuned
and
for
gentlemen.
Daddy's Home 2 next week.
Act 1. Joko.
Is that-
Very
is that
radio loud.
NPR?
Yes, yeah. Act 1. Joko's insane. Act 2.
Yeah, he's
Is he
definitely
insane?
insane.
Is he insane? Act 3. He's insane.
Let me read this IMDb description, and Joe can tell us all about the creation of Just Ice League.
Just nice.
Fueled by his restored faith in humanity and inspired by Superman's selfless act, Bruce Wayne enlists the help of his newfound ally, Diana Prince, to face an even greater enemy. I feel like there was more allies than Diana Prince.
Sure. Sure, IMDb.
Maybe a whole league of them.
Mhm.
I don't
Yeah.
know. Just me, though.
So the film was kind of directed by Zack Snyder. And Zack Snyder has directed Dawn of the Dead, 300, Watchmen, Legend of Guardians, The Owls of Ga'Hoole.
That's one film.
We talked about that in our Batman vs. Superman episode. You can go hear us talk about that then. Sucker Punch, Man of Steel, and, of course, Batman v Superman, Dawn of Justice. The film was announced in October 2014 with Zack Snyder on board to direct and Chris Terrio attached to write the script, initially announced as Justice League Part 1, with a second part to follow in 2019. The second film was indefinitely delayed to accommodate a standalone Batman film with Affleck. Ben Affleck, that is.
Oh,
In case
not
nobody,
Casey.
in case nobody got that. Principal photography commenced in April 2016 and ended in October 2016. Snyder then hired Joss Whedon to write scenes that would be filmed during reshoots. However, Snyder left the project in 2017 following the death of his daughter. Whedon was hired to oversee the remainder of post-production, including directing additional scenes written by himself. Snyder received a sole director credit for the film, with Whedon receiving a screenplay credit in post. So that was kind of a big deal.
His daughter killed himself.
Yes,
Herself.
her daughter
Wow.
committed suicide.
Which was, I think, yeah, he had to just completely step away and be like,
It wasn't.
somebody else take this over. I have to deal with this.
I think this is an incredibly personal subject, obviously, for Zack Snyder, but I'm so far removed I can speculate. His daughter's suicide happened months before he dropped out.
Did it?
Yes. Like almost a year before he dropped out.
You sure?
Yes. This wasn't like an immediate thing. Yeah,
It was definitely reported as like an immediate thing.
it was.
Maybe he tried to kind of power through.
Yeah, I
something for a
yeah, no,
bit,
I think that was definitely the case. Is I think he was just kind of like, all right, like I have to continue.
I can also imagine it doesn't matter at what point you're in the production or pre-production or post-production. Like I'm sure it's just a grind for the director the entire way through. So like,
Yes.
yeah, it could have happened on like, oh, I've agreed to direct the Batman movie, and it's still kind of like, that's just too much work to take on when you're trying to grieve and
definitely, yeah.
move on in your life.
At
Like,
some point, even like a family might have stepped in and been like,
we need you here. Yeah.
you can't fucking just do this. Also, as a very insensitive kind of standpoint, I think maybe the film was not doing very well, and I think I don't know. I think maybe somebody might have been like, why don't you go with your grieving family, kind of.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
Is that number 3 on the Cold Joe list?
Yes.
Or
No,
is that-
definitely.
That might take number 2,
Definitely.
actually.
Shane's been listening into our episode that will happen 2 weeks from now, but I have been incredibly insensitive lately, and this is just the beginning, baby. We got one more episode to go. Honestly, this has been my theory for a while, is that they were just kind of like, honestly, Zach, you've been a fucking huge disappointment to us. If not us, then just critics and audience.
So you think someone from the studio was like,
Yes.
go
Yes.
help your family?
Yes.
I thought you meant like one of his friends.
Like the
being
boss
No,
in
no,
the
no,
office
no,
where he's
no.
like, why don't you take a week off?
Yes,
know,
no,
do
no,
something."
exactly, and I think it's conveniently around the same time that Joss Whedon was also like writing scenes or whatever, and they were like, why don't we have Joss Whedon also direct these scenes? Kind of like it was just kind of like, you take time off. Those scenes that Joss Whedon, like, we've finished filming the initial
the
movie.
majority of it. Yeah.
And our reshoot is going to be more extensive than your average movie, which we've already heard about. which I think it's around like a third or half of the movie, I think, is
In
reshot.
reshoots?
Yes.
Wow.
Mhm. They spent in I don't even have a number, like an exponential amount of this movie has been reshot. Every movie in Hollywood is reshot, just for a disclaimer. But this movie has a huge kind of budget for its reshoot or whatever. And I think it's fair to say that maybe like Zack Snyder could kind of be like, you know what, somebody else take this reshoot. I have to go grieve.
I've done the bulk of the work. Like,
No. And also,
you're already going to studio the fuck out of this from here, so.
Also, yeah, I mean, like, what better hands to leave it in than Joss Whedon, who has directed The Avengers, you know? And Joss Whedon has written these scenes for whatever reason. I think mostly because the studio was incredibly they really followed the critics with this one. They were like, we need humor, we need this and that. We'll get into that later. But that's just my little insight that I think that's insensitive, but I think it's accurate. I'll get into the rest of my notes really quick. The film had an estimated production of $300 million. It's tied in second place with the Pirates of the Caribbean at the World's End as the most expensive film ever made. In first place is Pirates of the Caribbean on Stranger Tides. If you guys go to wikipedia.org/most expensive films, it's honestly worth the read. There's a lot of like really interesting, like, you wouldn't expect that like Tangled is in like the top 10. Like there's a lot of like really interesting stuff in there. Obviously Avengers Age of Ultron is number 4. John Carter is number 5.
What?
That one doesn't surprise me. I remember that being.
Tangled is number 6. Spider-Man 3 is number 7.
Oh no.
Like, honestly, yeah, look at the list. It's very interesting. But it's crazy to think that this is the second most expensive in the film, like in film history, that's ever been made. Two other notes that I have. Snyder's longtime cinematographer, Larry Fong, was replaced by Fabian Wagner due to scheduling conflicts. Larry Fong had shot 300, Watchmen, Sucker Punch, Batman v Superman, Dawn of Justice. Fong actually chose to shoot Kong Skull Island over this film. And Fabian Wagner was brought in. Fabian Wagner, he's really kind of a rookie too. He's only really shot TV episodes and Victor Frankenstein before he came in and shot this. So
It's kind of apparent.
yes, I didn't want to get to that, but it was kind of apparent. It's very obviously not Larry Fong. I mean, and it's very apparent that Kong Skull Island is Larry Fong, because that has incredible cinematography. But as we discussed in our BVS episode, Batman vs. Superman, Hans Zimmer swore off superhero movies halfway through the production of BVS. So Danny Elfman was brought in during BVS to continue to write and compose music, for Batman vs. Superman, and it was just solo Danny Elfman during Justice League. So that was another change kind of behind the scenes. Yeah, and that's pretty much all the notes that I think that are significant that I had.
You don't want to talk about the mustache?
Oh yeah.
Oh,
Let's talk about it.
But have we not talked about that at some point during I feel like we talked about that at some point during How Many Fingers, but
Maybe in the past, yeah, but just
I'll
to bring it.
I'll definitely talk about it. It's very. I mean, so Henry Cavill. Is that his name? Henry Cavill?
Henry Cavill.
Is shooting Mission Impossible 6. And he has they had to do extensive reshoots for Justice League. And I think that was not as expected. As I mentioned before, and so they had Henry Cavill return, who's filming Mission Impossible, and his character kind of has this, he has
a scruff going on, and then a mustache,
a scruff,
like
yeah,
thick
and
mustache.
a full-on mustache. And I mean, that mustache has to be a huge part of the contract because they've had to CGI around it instead of.
Or,
yeah,
as I don't think we've discussed this on camera, but I feel like the more logical explanation is that
it's the for
the
record, it's the same studio that both these movies are under.
Warner Brothers, or
yes,
no, I thought Paramount was the one that forbade him from having the mustache.
Let me check this real quick.
You should check that really quick.
Okay.
Because I was just reading an article about the mustache, and in that article it said that Paramount forbade him from having from shaving the mustache.
That
would make more sense.
Yeah.
But I feel like there's got to be a way around that. Like if you're,
like a fake mustache.
I mean, he's got the. I mean, in terms of like
Paramount.
Yeah, wasn't it?
Yes, yeah, no, you were correct.
Okay,
yeah. Okay. For a minute, I thought it was an inter-studio battle, but it's between two studios, which makes a lot more sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's Paramount. And
so that could just be a contract thing, but I still feel like part of it has to just be like him being like, the DC franchise is going down, 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 regardless of what I'm contracted for. This is not what's going to. It already hasn't taken my career to the next level. Like I'm not going to put my eggs in the basket of looking my best for Justice League, which is already kind of doomed from the start. Like.
Right.
If they need to CGI out my mustache, that's their problem. I'm going to keep my mustache for the Mission Impossible movie, which maybe I'll,
and
do
boy,
well
was
in.
that a problem.
Was that like a $20 million problem or however much it costs?
You also have to imagine, as Henry Cavill, you have to be like, I spent my time filming this entire movie. Like, I'm on making another movie.
I've moved on.
Yeah.
Why am I coming back?
I can't completely blame.
Get it right
him.
the first time.
And I also can't blame the studio either for being like, no, he's not gonna fucking shave his mustache.
Finish your movie in 2 years.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, no, we're not like, again, like we're just talking about in the Red Letter Media review of Justice League. It was kind of like, wouldn't it be easier? And I think we've all said this at some point. Wouldn't it be easier just to just do a post-production mustache on Henry Cavill? It's like there's no reason to. He was under contract for Justice League, and he's under contract for this.
Mm-hmm.
He's not going to shave his mustache and inconvenience the film that he's doing
project,
right now.
Yeah.
It makes sense. I'm sorry.
Justice League really got the shit out of the stick on that.
It's,
but you should have made the good movie right from the start, Like every movie does reshoots, but not every movie has to reshoot a third of the movie.
Right, yeah. Or it was poor planning. It was just kind of like, if you're going to have these extensive reshoots, pay these people X amount of money to, stay within. Because, I mean, actors have to get skinny, actors have to get fat, actors have to, be within a certain mind space for different roles or whatever. Mm. It's like, you continue paying that person to be in that if you're going to have these reshoots. And obviously, DC is in this fucking chaotic space where it's kind of like, we changed all of Suicide Squad in post-production. It's just kind of like we changed all of Justice League in post-production. It's just like, it's too fucking chaotic for them to deal with. But yeah.
That's all the notes.
Yeah, that's all the notes.
So I know how Joe feels about Batman versus Superman.
Yeah.
I know how I feel about Batman versus Superman. Mm-hmm. For anyone who hasn't listened to that episode, Joe is on the side of the critic community and the world at large. I am one of the very few who will defend Batman versus Superman, at least to the point of it not being a horrible movie or as nearly as bad as society and the critics have made it out to be. I think there was a lot of dogpiling in that movie in terms of it's really easy to give a bad review of a movie that's got a 13% on Rotten Tomatoes it's a lot harder to go in and clear your mind and be like, maybe I can enjoy this movie.
And here's the thing: is I will come at the defense of Batman vs Superman in this movie compared to what this does.
Oh, so you think this is worse than
Yes.
Batman vs Superman?
I think. Well,
I also do, but I'm coming from a higher.
Okay. But what were you going to ask Shane?
The point I'm getting to is, I want to know what Shane thinks about Batman vs Superman.
I'll get into that later.
Okay. So I actually, just before this, I listened to your Batman vs Superman podcast.
One. It's a long one.
It's a pretty long one. It took me all day because I'm like starting and stopping it. But and you guys actually brought up some points that I hadn't thought of. But on the whole, I mean, I liked it at first. At first, I was like, okay, I like this.
Right.
And then I watched the extended edition, and
which I haven't watched yet.
It's better. It's better.
It is better.
But even the fact that it's better, it's just such a mess.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
it's an entertaining mess. You know, it's sort of all over the place. But I think it's like every time they put a really cool scene out, and I'd be, oh, that's really cool. They'd have a terrible scene to follow it, something really cringy. Like the first time they introduced Batman, and he's hanging against like a ceiling with the slow pan. He's like, ugh. Like just so many laugh out loud moments that you're not supposed to laugh out loud at were kind of paralleled by these really cool moments. Like, okay, this fight's really awesome between Wonder Woman and Superman and all this stuff.
They slightly fix it, but also just make it worse in a way. I don't know how to explain it. Yeah, it's
in the extended or
in the extended, yes. Because I watched the extended, and it was just, I thought I was gonna get a better experience, and I was like, they made it a little worse and they made it a little better.
I don't know if this is a good jumping off point to start the Justice League review, but I feel like I couldn't really pick up on any moments that really made me cringe in Justice League. Like I feel like they were super conscious.
True.
I feel like they were super conscious of like people, you know, we had all this stuff that we thought was cool in Batman vs Superman and the audience did not react, and I felt like they kind of pulled back and almost played it too safe in Justice League. Joe's grinning, so he's got a cringeworthy moment.
It's a lot of it, man.
But I don't think anything is like laugh out loud cringy like the part that Shane's talking about.
There
or
were
like
some really cringy parts in Batman vs Superman.
We don't have stuff like there's stuff that I can see the basic logic of like why people think it's cringy. Mm-hmm. Like the Martha thing has been much talked about. I still think it's it's a little dogged on. Mm-hmm. But I can see why someone could, you know, maybe not be thinking on the level that I am to allow it to not be cringy. But I feel like there's nothing that could be perceived really as totally cringy in this.
I don't
like if it's cringy, it's for reasons where like you're thinking too deeply about it. There's nothing that's on the surface cringy in this. You know what I'm saying? Like on the surface, there's a lot of cringy stuff in Batman vs Superman, and me trying to think about it in a new perspective, trying to look at it freshly, didn't cringe at it. Society cringed at it. I feel like they had a lot of stuff that. Yeah, I cringe at because I'm thinking at it from a different perspective, but society, like my theater fucking loved Justice League. And I think if you look on Rotten Tomatoes, like they've got like a 86%, really high, while the critics have like a 38 or something.
It was 40%.
It's at 40 now?
Yeah.
Some positive critics now.
See, my problem is that my problem with Batman vs Superman and my low score and then seeing this movie is that I agree too much with you in Batman vs Superman and Zack Snyder's vision.
Mm-hmm.
That to see this is like, here's the thing. I didn't expect to get into this until like later into the review, but I mean, I love Zack Snyder. 300, truly a marvel. Watchmen, strange music choice, but I still love that movie. It's a beloved graphic novel. It's one of the most beloved graphic novels of all time, one of my favorite graphic novels of all time. Put that aside, the movie still does, it's so great. It's such a great movie. Yeah. And I mean, I'm still looking forward to whatever HBO does with it. That's news. HBO is going to make some sort of mini series about Watchmen.
That's exciting.
Yeah, no, and that's definitely cool. I do like Zack Snyder. I've never seen Sucker Punch. I've heard terrible things about it. But Batman vs Superman, again, I have to go with like the nerd writer, like kind of source, Nerdwriter1 on YouTube does a bunch of like great video essays on YouTube. I definitely recommend you guys check it out. Even the Batman vs Superman one, where he's like, like my biggest complaint isn't that it was too dark or the aesthetic of it. It's just that Zack Snyder is too obsessed with these moments, and it never really builds an entire story, and that's what makes it kind of like this bad movie. And so Justice League ends up kind of being this Zack Snyder movie that looks like Zack Snyder with like a lobotomy made it. It's just like,
it doesn't feel like Zack Snyder, which I think is why I don't like it as much as I liked Batman versus Superman, because at least I could kind of hang my laurels on like, well, what did you think you were getting into with the Zack Snyder movie? Like, if you've seen all the other stuff, like this is what he does, and maybe the source material isn't as rich as like Watchmen or 300 to draw from in, this kind of studio created, whatever we're gonna do to try and catch up with Marvel type fuckery. But I didn't think it was as horrible as everyone was making out to be. But this is like, the stuff that I liked about Batman vs Superman is not in this movie either. And then it has the stuff that people thought Batman vs Superman was missing, but it doesn't have the stuff that made Batman vs Superman good in my eyes.
Well, that's the point of that whole video essay, is that like the things that you critics think that it is missing is not what it's missing, and DC is going to listen to that at like loud volumes, and they're going to change that, and it's just kind of gonna be like Ezra Miller like throwing in punchlines and then fucking like cranking up the saturation and color correction and everything. Like all these like costumes that were meant to, like, again, we're watching in Red Letter Media, all these costumes that are meant to be in dark lighting, like all of a sudden they look fucking ridiculous in the broad light or whatever. And it's just kind of like, nope, you guys didn't understand what was wrong with Batman vs Superman, and now you're making it worse because you're trying to make it this like Marvel clone.
Well, it's like, why let Zack Snyder direct it if you're not gonna let Zack Snyder be Zack Snyder?
Because here's the thing: people love to hate on Zack Snyder, it feels like.
Yes.
Since Batman vs.
Now
Superman.
they do. When 300 came out, like there were so many articles that were like, Zack Snyder is fucking saving film with this like low budget, high intensity, like CGI filmmaking where we can make these incredible looking movies for cheap. There's so many articles about that, and people just are so quick to forget that like at a time like we thought Zack Snyder was going to save film.
I don't even think I hate Zack Snyder for Batman vs Superman. Like in that review, I don't think I ever explicitly say, like, I was listening to it the other day and I was like, I think the studio has something to fucking do with
most
like,
of it.
With a lot of this. It's kind of like, well, we gotta have fucking Wonder Woman in it, in like that's gotta take the entire third act, and we gotta have Superman and them fight, and like it's just kind of this bad idea that evolved into something even worse, kind of. And then we have this movie, which I don't know. I'm gonna get ahead of myself again. In the last scenes of this movie, it's not really a spoiler because the fucking title of the movie, they walk into like this abandoned kind of like property, which looked like it was previously a mansion. There's like a hanging chandelier sideways.
It's Wayne Manor.
Yeah, Wayne Manor.
Oh, is that Wayne Manor?
I only know that from Wikipedia.
They don't even show the outside of it. You just have to tell by the inside.
It just looked like Batman fucking... Ben Affleck walks in that shit like he's like, yeah, no, it looks good. Like, kind of like...
I got the feeling it was a property he owned. While watching it, I didn't understand that it was Wayne Manor.
I had no fucking idea.
They
I thought it was
Wayne...
something that was like going to be the fucking... Yeah, no, go on.
I'm so used to the Batcave being underneath like Wayne Manor. And, like,
they showed Wayne Manor once during the whole first Batman vs Superman movie, so it's kind of
I can't even remember.
It's kind of a stretch that you'd have to.
I thought it was like a burned out fucking property. Like
it looked
like,
really bad.
Yeah, no. It was like blackened, and in this one it looked like this looked.
I mean,
like,
they are drawing from a Batman that's like later in his career.
Batman now. Yeah.
I'm not like, I mean, I've read a lot of Batman, but I can't remember specifically a Batman where
this looks like. I mean, this looks like a different Wayne Manor than BVS Wayne Manor.
Oh, okay.
I can't even remember. Really charred.
That was burned out. That looked like
it was burned in
locals
BVS?
have burned it.
It looked really bad.
Burned it down. Yeah, and in this one, it's like a brand. It just. I thought it was gonna be like a UN kind of building, like it was just kind of in the center.
I thought it was like just a abandoned building that they were just. We'll buy this.
Yeah, no,
or we own it already because we just own a ton of shit, and we'll repurpose this to.
Because he like buys banks so he can have it anywhere.
Why did they have so many winks and nods in this movie? Why don't they fucking make that a wink and nod for like me to?
Yeah.
None under. The point that I was getting to is when they are walking in that building and they're like, "We will build this, and this will be like the Justice League headquarters or whatever." Like, that's what I'm into. I'm not like. I mean, I think we all grew up with like the Justice League cartoon. Like,
there was not a lot of like Easter eggs or like fan servicey stuff, I thought, towards the Justice League sort of mythos and like storyline.
Yeah, no, and the crazy. I want to stop hogging the fucking mic really quick, but I mean, like, when the Marvel has built such an impressive empire and franchise out of the Avengers, I've been a comic fan since I was like a little kid. I don't fucking know really the Avengers that well, but if you ask me about the Justice League, I could tell you all about it and what the Justice League headquarters looks like and everything. They're working with something so iconic that I'm almost starting to backtrack the success of, I don't think you guys need to have followed the Marvel formula as much as I think you guys could have started it like, this is the Justice League, we're following this problem, and like kind of just been thrown into it. Because I think that works pretty well.
It does.
I really don't fucking care about Aquaman. I think he's fucking a boring character. I really don't care about Robot Man. He's
Robot Dr. Cyborg, I think is his real name.
I really don't care about Cyborg. He's kind of a boring character too. Flash, I'm a little intrigued by, and it's too little too late in this movie. But honestly, if I saw like the fucking pearly gates of like the Justice League and like that glass building and everything, like, I think they just should have started it from there and like had the individual adventures from there, because I love Superman to death, and I didn't care about Man of Steel. I didn't care about Batman v Superman. Wonder Woman I liked, but like honestly, it could have all been like, we could have started this whole franchise from a different place, and it could have been so great, and we could have established Superman as such like a different person. Like whatever. Let's get into talking about this film, because I don't
disagree, but let's get into some of the specifics. There's
so
much
really
to
wanted
unpack.
To talk about that
movie.
at the end. Okay, here I am. I'm gonna take over again. I fucking hate this first scene. I think it's so lame.
Which first? The very first shot.
Very first
cell phone
scene,
footage.
I honestly, the first 15 minutes of this movie are. They drug me down. Like, it really pulled my spirit down, and I'll get into that later. But it kind of felt like. It felt like an afterthought. A, B, again with the afterthought thing, it felt like somebody saw like Spider-Man Homecoming, where like
social media stuff on that.
But they also didn't have like the decency to change the aspect ratio of the smartphone. Like,
to make it wide,
yeah, it was just vertical, and they tried to trick you into thinking that an iPhone was really only 3 inches tall, and they had like the whole user interface at the beginning. It was just kind of like, if that's a file, it never shows the user interface. Like, that's stupid. That's not like a documentary would show it.
And clear. That's one of the most clear shots, I think, of the CGI mustache chain going on.
Also,
which is why it's definitely an afterthought, because it's like.
I didn't know about
Homecoming
the
did well
coming into it.
Okay.
So I was looking at him thinking, why does Superman look so weird?
It's not even the mustache, I think. I think the mustache is an easy fix.
It's just
because he's
bottom half of the
face.
He's
scruffy, so they have to literally reconstruct.
That too?
He's got like about the amount of scruff that I have now, and then a mustache.
Oh my
So then
they have to make him clean shaven.
That's what's uncanny, is that they have to kind of like recreate like the cleft of his like chin, and it looks too defined, and you're like, he looked good. He looked like Superman in the other movies. Now he looks like an actual comic book character.
Yes,
it looks ridiculous.
That's what I was saying. He looks.
Why add more scenes of him looking like that?
That was the weirdest intro to a movie, having a 2-minute iPhone interview with a bunch of dumb kids.
That was arguably one of the worst. That was just one of the worst first scenes I've ever seen in a movie.
I can imagine a movie where that scene works.
Yeah.
But this is not that movie. They didn't make that movie. Like, I can imagine an
Even
idea
Spider-Man
and a
Homecoming,
dream that someone had for this kind of movie, where like, you know, seeing this kind of different side of Superman and someone asking him something and he thinks about it. And then we kind of like, it wasn't even really Superman's movie. So why is he the
podcast?
Like, we all
in
know,
that case, okay.
We all know he loves Lois
shut
Lane.
Up. Yeah.
Like, he loves Lois Lane. You don't need to have this dumb reason to put that
That's
in.
the last scene of the. Yeah. Well, actually, there's something about Earth that I do like. You know, it was just kind of like, shut the fuck up. And also, we as an audience are coming off of Batman vs Superman, and then we go into this scene, and his like uniform goes from like the darkest of navy blues you've ever seen to like sky blue like uniform, kind of like on it was just like crazy. Like it was also, I mean, just like but before we are reintroduced to Superman in this film, not really a spoiler alert because we've seen a ton of press about like all this shit. And we just talked about, you know, CGIing his mustache off. But this film has to establish 6 or 7 times, at least I've accounted, as Superman was a beacon of hope. Superman was the light. Superman was the yada yada. And that was not the case in BVS. There was
they kind of make up for it. They do kind of switch at the end, though. Like, yeah, they have the whole thing about people kind of hating him in BVS.
Right.
But then it's kind of like when he's gone, everyone realizes like, fuck, like, Superman's gone. They have the whole like huge military salute and funeral for him in BVS. So I will disagree on that point.
But that was one of my complaints about BVS. It was just kind of too little, too late, kind of. I don't know.
But I think it's logical though. I think it's like you have like these figures that you're kind of like, well, they're the topical thing that we're hating at this time, and then they're fucking gone, and you're like, oh shit, we kind of needed that guy.
Don't know what you got till it's gone, man.
It's like,
yeah,
big paradise.
Seem to go,
well, just you
don't know what you got till it's gone.
And maybe
paradise to put up a parking lot.
Check out The Few and the Far for more of that sultry voice from Shane Johnson.
Check out Santana and
we wrote that song.
Who else does that
probably
remake?
Rob Thomas or something. I don't know.
No, it's like Santana and
Counting Crows. It sounds like a Counting Crows.
I think it's Counting Crows.
But it's like also a remake of a song. I don't know. Go on.
I've almost completely lost my train of thought. Basically, I think it made sense in Batman vs Superman.
No, I can agree.
Like a lot of things, it made sense to me. It missed the general public and even just critics at large.
It has a very patriotic and I think your girlfriend's mad at you.
She's slamming doors upstairs.
And Jonah, you're gonna step outside for a minute.
I don't know, but honestly, it's all of these. I mean, it's that first scene which is iPhone footage, and then it goes into a fucking like waving flag that just says like a waving flag that also has like this kind of like digitally manipulated like text of Justice League put over it, and I was just kind of like, what the fuck?
It's like a video game.
Yeah, it was like, what is this
Super
fucking
Nintendo.
title sequence? And then it goes like right into like a Batman kind of like on the roof being like a detective.
Well, no, they have the
montage.
They have the montage.
Is that
Which I do
that?
like because I think that's the most Zack Snyder thing we have in this movie.
Is a
It's
very
like the
Zack
beginning
Even
of
if it's-
Watchmen.
Even if it's like Zack Snyder light.
It's
They ripped on it in Red Letter Meter, but I do really like this song choice. The only thing
pooping on a
Who was
Superman
that, by
is
the way?
dead.
Was that
It's,
wasn't Regina Spektor, but it was
It's a Leonard
it's
Cohen.
Sigrid, but it's a Leonardo Cohen
Oh.
cover. of the song Everybody Knows, which a lot of the lyrics in it are fine, but then there's the one lyric that really stands out where she's like,
it's like the dog's dead,
like their father or their dog just died, and it's like, it's really good in that cover if it's just a song, but it doesn't really work in like a montage because it really sticks out, and you're kind of like, ooh, like, ooh, I'm not thinking about what I'm watching, I'm thinking about the lyrics to this song, and they almost don't really relate to what I'm watching at this point. I wish they would have just like muted the music for that verse, or like, if you look at that actual song, there's like 8 verses. There's so many other verses they could have just stuck in for that part instead.
I promise I'm not trying to like rip apart this movie at every tear, but like during this montage there's like 2 white guys trying to beat up like a Muslim business, like Muslim run business, and I was like, what does this have to do with anything?
No, again, there's so much stuff in this that I feel like I can see where like Zack Snyder was like, yeah, I'm gonna make a really topical, important superhero movie, because I don't think he obviously doesn't set out to make like these awful movies. I think he's a smart guy. He's got shitty source material, and then he gets studioed the fuck out of, and they're making all these decisions, you know, without his knowledge or consent, or he's forced to make these decisions. You know, like the studio being like, it's got to be this length, there's got to be this amount of jokes in it, you got to cast this person in it, and there's only so much that he's able to control. I can definitely see a movie where that was supposed to make more sense for the rest of it.
Why do I feel like Rotten Tomatoes is just making these movies for them? Like, oh, Rotten Tomatoes hated us, critics hated us, let's screw over Zack Snyder, the studio's just gonna rewrite everything. Like you're right, that made absolutely no sense. It was like the desert Batman scene with the terrorists. Like, it just seems like it just comes out of nowhere. There's just no point for it later on.
That scene is especially confusing if you watch this movie, where it's kind of
because
like,
it doesn't look like that in this. It was supposed to be it was supposed to be like a look forward to like this movie.
that looks like the Iraq War with bugs. Like,
I mean, I guess there are going to be more bugs, because I mean, this is not a spoiler, but as we've read, like Steppenwolf is supposed to be sort of leading towards Darkseid. I guess he's the son, or I'm not really familiar with the villain in the comic books, but from what I've read, this is like the stepping stone towards the major DC villain, Darkseid.
Because Steppenwolf is supposed to bring back, I mean, he says it during
he even
this
says
movie.
Darkseid,
he wants to bring back Darkseid. I mean,
so the bugs might be, maybe there's more where there are going to be in Iraq.
Will we see a scene?
Because we never saw Batman with the duster coat.
And that's what I was waiting for. Will we see that, or was that like a hallucination of Zack Snyder?
Oh, we'll see that. There's no way they could just not do that.
No, that's what I'm saying. They can't just not do that. Yeah.
But I did like that opening sequence. I just felt like it was like Zack Snyder light. Like they pulled back and they were like, yeah, don't do as much slow motion during this scene. You know, like there's a little bit with like the oranges flying in the air and stuff like that. Some of it is a little cheesy, like the homeless guy with the sign that just says "I tried." What's the point there? I can't make I don't know what movie that makes.
It's
sense.
A little over the top. It's a little over
like
the top.
The Muslim thing. I get like there's definitely a movie where it like, and even in this sort of. In the version of this movie that has more to do with Superman, it makes sense because it's like Superman's gone. The montage is trying to establish that like the world has turned into a really shitty place since Superman is gone. But the rest of the movie isn't following up on that, like, because we don't have any like, what's the real world like? We're just following these superheroes going around, and then the final battle takes place in like Russia with like where there's barely anybody. Like we needed something in America to be like, America or just the world at large like has been fucked up by Superman not being here, and we had none of that. We didn't have anything that was like, man, villain. We have like lines, but we don't see it. Like Alfred says, like, I don't recognize this world anymore. And in the movie, you're kind of like, seems the same as all the other superhero movies. Bad people are trying to do bad shit. Like there was nothing that like kind of said that like, oh, the rest of the world has been affected by, besides the montage. There's no evidence. You know, it was just. They put flags up. They're sad that he's gone. And then that one scene, I felt like we needed more. I wanted a better montage. That's why I say it's like Zack Snyder light.
And
I feel like Zack Snyder, if he had like complete control of this, would have been like, oh yeah, slow-mo, oranges, apples, everything's gonna be flying, super CGI'd. It's gonna be heavy-handed, but it's gonna look beautiful, and you're gonna get the point. It's gonna establish what this movie is supposed to take place in. Like in Watchmen, we had the like kind of begin like here's the Watchmen.
I was literally about to say,
taking all the pictures of the different generations of the Watchmen, explaining all the stuff that we got in the middle chapters of the Watchmen, or those little things they threw in the Watchmen book.
I was about to say, let me set a predecessor for this review. Is often I will YouTube the opening scene of Watchmen. No. The credit scene of Watchmen.
The end or
the
opening credits?
The opening credit scene of
Bob
Watchmen.
Dylan.
It's the times that are changing, right?
Yeah. It's the times that are changing, and you get all these like really. I watch that and I like kind of cry, and it's so reminiscent of why I love film, and just. It's so reminiscent of why I like Zack Snyder as a director and why I think he's one of the most important. He's, as much as people make fun of him, he's still one of the most important directors because, yeah, sure, he's made 300 and that was like almost his indie film kind of. But then you watch that in Watchmen and he's like recreating all of these incredibly historic, iconic moments, and he's placing Watchmen characters in there, and it looks so great. And you know, the Bob Dylan song, which is Bob Dylan, and you know, all of the music from that genre is incredibly important in that graphic novel, and it's so emotionally overwhelming. Like I remember kind of like being like teared up, like when we went to go see it in theaters. I was just like, oh my god, this is so incredibly just important, like this film. And you get like this kind of weird like when fucking Cyborg is trying to reach them through the computer, and all he can do is like type to Wonder Woman is kind of like, I'm here. That's what that like the oranges in slow motion feels like to me. Like that's Zack Snyder being like, I'm still here, you know, like that's crazy. Like, cause like the rest of it is steamrolled by studio and Joss Whedon. I don't even really completely like Joss Whedon. We even talked in extent about Joss Whedon, about how he's a fucking like feminist fucking piece of shit that actually has been cheating on his wife for 20 years. And like, just like, there's fucking hope for Zack Snyder, and it's steamrolled in this fucking movie. It's
imagine a universe where like Batman vs Superman came out. It was as he completely envisioned it.
Yep.
It was well received, because even
that
would
be 5 fingers for me.
There's
iconic imagery in that movie, and I love it so much. And it killed me to disagree with you, but I love some of the imagery in that movie, and I say that during the review. But like, it doesn't. The whole third act is garbage. The whole like half of the second act is kind of garbage.
But like imagine a scenario where he puts out the movie he wanted to make that was in his head. Like he makes his Watchmen or his 300 out of Batman vs Superman. It comes out. Audiences fucking go wild for it, and they're like, Zach, do whatever the fuck you want for Justice League, which is, it was still building towards Justice League, and Batman, that was always the goal, to get to Justice League. And then imagine Justice League as Zack Snyder completely wanted it, in a universe where his daughter doesn't commit suicide and he doesn't have to step away. Whether it was intent, you know, whether for whatever reason, Zack Snyder follows this film to completion, makes it the way that he wants it to be. I think, that's what I'm like. There are parts where I'm like, I know what you were trying to do, like, because I know Zack Snyder, but audiences aren't going to get that, and audiences aren't going to give a shit, and they shouldn't. I mean, on the surface, this is pretty much a garbage movie. It's pretty bad. Like, it doesn't come out as a good finished product. Regardless of the circumstances. I just feel bad because I feel like there is a universe where a good Justice League movie is made.
I don't see any.
A lot of shit had to happen to DC and to Zack Snyder to get to this point where this is the movie that Zack Snyder makes.
It sucks. It just sucks because it's not just this movie. It's so many movies where it's a battle between the director and the studio. And some of them win out and some of them don't. And this is just like a tragic case of the director just getting boned. And I hope this doesn't affect any future movies he does too. You know what I'm saying? And like, despite that, I still have hope for Zack Snyder. If Zack Snyder puts out another movie, I'm going to go watch it. You know, he's still a good director, but it's just unfortunate that he's getting railroaded like this. That being said,
and that he's tied to the DC franchise, and he's going to probably have to deal with a few more DC movies, even if he's not directing, because he's kind of their Kevin Feige or whatever you say for Marvel. Honestly, where he's been overseeing how this whole thing is going to go.
This is a sweet deal for Joss Whedon, because I think he was able to talk everyone down to, hey, I get the same amount of money, but you just give me like a co-writing credit, you know, like in advance, knowing how bad this movie is.
I think he thought he was going to save this movie, though, and I think we haven't really gotten to this. I think his involvement hurts this movie. Again, that's coming from me, who gave 3 fingers to just Zack Snyder doing Batman versus Superman.
Oh, it definitely hurts this
movie. But the tonal inconsistency in this movie is
it's
awful.
Stupid. Yeah.
It has none of them. It has none of the things that I liked about Batman vs Superman, and it has some of the things that I barely like about Marvel movies. Where, as in, it's funny. I laughed. I had an enjoyable time on the surface watching this movie, but it didn't engage me on any real visual level. It didn't really pull at my heartstrings at any moment ever in this movie.
This movie doesn't need humor, honestly.
Well, but
that's what I think.
They shoehorned in the humor after Batman versus Superman was just everyone hated that. They're like, let's make it a little more like a comic book, not a graphic novel, not Frank Miller. Let's make it more like a comic book. Right. Let's throw in these random lines, like where Superman, he's flying to punch Steppenwolf, and he's like, "Hey, is this guy bothering you?" Like he's some like douchebag at the bar. They just throw in these random lines.
That's they fucking like. I loved Batman and I loved Superman in Batman vs Superman. Again, another reason why I liked it and other people hated it. It resonated with me. It felt like the graphic novels that I had been reading about Batman vs Superman. It felt true to the characters, even if it was dark. That was what I got. I never was laughing while I was reading, like, you know, the Killing Joke or like all the Jeff Loeb and Tim Sale Batman novels. You know, they weren't funny. They were cool. They were dark. They were emotional. It was emo Batman, like, you know, inside his head. What am I thinking about? And we got that in Batman versus Superman. And then they kind of just completely abandoned that in this movie. Again, like, they're just listening to the critics too much, who don't really know what they're fucking doing with movies. Like, Superman, like, went from being like the emotional Superman that I related to in Man of Steel and Batman vs Superman to being like, I'm funny and I'm happy all the time, even though I was dead for like 2 years and I just came back. Everything should be fucking like, I really liked him fighting everyone when he came back. That made sense to me. That was cool, because it's like, yeah, why did you fucking, like, you killed me and then you brought me back and now I don't understand anything. I wanted more of that, like, darker side of Superman. But instead, like, he just immediately, like, I just need to go see my family home. And then I'm ready to make punchlines and like be in like this happy fucking like blue and red costume.
I'm gonna kiss my girlfriend, then I won't be mad anymore.
Well, I mean, everyone, it's crazy. It's fucking crazy, because everyone's alluding to that. The way that they cut this film, too, it's Aquaman is like, you lose something when you die. You know that? And the Flash is like, it's like Pet Sematary, you know? And it's, everyone is saying, like, he's not going to be the same when he comes back, including Wonder Woman, and Batman even agrees. Really, the whole Justice League is really is kind of like, he's going to be this ultimate weapon, but he's not going to be the same. He's not going to be Clark Kent when he comes back. And then he comes back and he's like, I'm angry. You brought out Lois Lane. I guess I'm back.
And I was ready. I was ready to fully buy into, like, yeah, let's give me the, like, real dark Superman, like. Because, you know, it felt like an issue of a comic. Like, let's do this limited run of like shitty Superman, like, where he's an asshole and he's not himself because he's just been brought back from the dead. Like, I would have bought into that if you had the whole movie be like fuck, now we gotta like control Superman and kind of wield his power to defeat this enemy for the greater good.
You thought what they were doing with that box is that Mother is the box, right? That's kind of like the bad guy who's controlling Steppenwolf.
Yes.
You think, okay, Mother's they're using Mother to bring back Superman, so Mother's gonna have some sort of influence on Superman and turn everything against them.
Yeah.
That seemed like the logical step. But they were, instead of that, they were like, let's allude towards that, and then, okay, now Superman's okay again.
But we've seen press photos of Superman, not even pre-press. We've just seen press photos of Superman when Zack Snyder was still part of this project. Even when his daughter is dead, I'm sorry. These are photos of Superman that we saw on set. Literally, there was a photo of Superman in I was waiting for this entire thing. There's photos of Superman in an all-black Superman costume. Just all black, gray tone. Super, like, downer Zack Snyder. I'm into it. And he's fucking sitting on a pyramid of skulls. Like that's in like the Leonardo DiCaprio
Revenant.
The Revenant. Like he's sitting on like a fucking pyramid of skulls, kind of like contemplating like, what have I done, kind of thing. And that was one of the press photos from like a year ago. It's kind of like, what happened between then and now? Like we wanted that dark fuck, I was just brought back to life from the dead. Like, it's gonna take more than, Lois Lane, cornfields in Ohio, or like Oklahoma.
And even if you're gonna not go like the dark route, he didn't. He went too far to the bright route. Like the punchlines that you're talking about, he didn't make those in the earlier Superman movies. And I understand those weren't well received, but it's weird to just completely change the character like that. And then they do the same thing with Batman, where like, I liked Batman in Batman vs Superman. I thought it was one of the more realistic portrayals I've seen of Batman, as much as I hate Ben Affleck.
Because he was like the Dark Knight Rises almost, right?
He's playing like the older version of Batman that's like, I'm fucking tired of doing this shit. It's breaking my body down, but there is still something inside of me that's like driving me to go fight these villains, save the world, do the right thing. And then in this one, like, I don't really get a sense of drive from him at all. I don't really get... You want Miami Vice? I'll take one.
Another Vice, please.
They tried to make him like a sense of humor in this movie. Like, he has almost as many punchlines as Barry Allen does.
Like that entire
They don't all
scene.
land. They're not very funny, but they try just as many punchlines with Batman.
Oh god.
Like that entire scene where Superman beats him up, and then he's just laying there like, I definitely broke something.
Something's not right.
And
yeah,
like,
whatever.
Like, why is like
it doesn't?
It's Batman. He doesn't have to have these jokes.
And that's what I think. Like, I think they were listening to the critics too much. That were like, "Oh, Batman's too serious in Batman vs Superman." And like Joe was saying, that wasn't the problem with it. Like, I fully enjoyed Batman being this kind of moody, brooding superhero that he was in Batman vs Superman, and I was ready for that. And I think that would have worked well for the kind of plot that they were trying to do in this. Of like, you have kind of these more zany, funny characters that he's trying to pull together, and he's not really a leader. He's a lone wolf. He doesn't like working with other people. He's not fun to be around because he's a moody fucking person who's just he's not a punchline guy. And that would have worked if they had done that, because then it's like, oh, we really need Superman to come here because he may not be a punchline machine, but he's like a beacon of hope. He brought the entire world together. He can bring the Justice League together. I didn't really buy that they needed Superman besides he's powerful. I wanted to buy that we needed Superman on like an emotional level, because he says as much. He's like, I can't bring this team together like Clark could. But I didn't really buy it because he's trying to make all these punchlines all the time.
We're watching 3 different movies, really.
Yeah.
And as my beer exploded and I started running back towards the kitchen, I have to agree with you on a point. This is an analogy I just thought of, and it's only really relevant right now, but it's kind of like this new Star Wars Battlefront, and it's these problems that they're having with the kind of pay to play and, you know, pay if you want to get better at it or whatever. And the fans were like, no, like, we fucking hate this. And fucking EA folded like a fucking napkin. And they were just kind of like, okay, we took it out of the game, kind of. It was just, that's DC. Like on an even worse scale. They were just kind of like, okay, we heard all your complaints and we changed everything. Like, of course, no, you have to fucking double down on what you presented, you know, or just change it to make an entirely different
fix
movie.
The right things about it. It's also like Batman vs Superman still made it. I mean, it had the historic drop after the first weekend. It's not like it lost money on Batman vs Superman. Like, they made their money back.
But you agree that they changed all the wrong things.
Yeah.
Like, okay, the art direction was going in the right place. It was just like the pacing and it was everything with this.
The plot was messy, and they oversimplified this plot so that it's just kind of like, it is what it is. They want to fight the big baddie guy that's coming to try and destroy the world.
I think it's an oversimplification though, because we've been talking about this. It's a comic book movie. They made this more comic book-esque. I can't think of a single comic book movie, maybe other than The Dark Knight, that has an amazing plot. This is just straight out of the comics. So here's the bad guy. Let's get the good guys together. Let's defeat this bad guy. I think
it's not that it has to be like complex or like complicated. It just, there was no emotional depth to it. Like, there was nothing that like really made me invest in the characters. Whereas in Batman vs Superman, other people weren't on board, but whatever emotional cues they were trying to put out, I bought into. So I was invested in, you know, the battle, them coming together to fight this greater evil thing. Like, that made sense to me. It worked for me, even if it didn't work for other people. But then, like, there's nothing that they're putting out here that like I'm emotionally invested in, and I don't imagine that the audience is either. My fear, based on like the audience reaction on Rotten Tomatoes, is that studios are going to start to, and I think they already have gotten this idea of like laughs are just as good as like an emotional connection to a superhero movie. That's why we have like Thor Ragnarok, which I still gave it a positive review, but most of what works with Thor Ragnarok is like
it's problematic. Yes,
it's the humor. And this is when I think it starts working to a worse degree, because the rest isn't really working. They tone down his visuals. They kind of fucking like cut like the Achilles heel of it. You cut him in the heel. They're taking what he is good for, and it's like, why even have Zack Snyder direct this? Just have Joss Whedon or someone else direct the entire thing, who can do this kind of like, you know, punchline filled, fun comedy movie. That's not why you hire Zack Snyder.
But that's
Watchmen's not funny. 300 is not funny. Sucker Punch is not funny. That's not the type of movie that Zack Snyder should be involved in. They're just trying to put too much shit together. And again, like, I think I fell victim to it a little bit with like Spider-Man Homecoming. I think it's still a pretty good movie. I think I was maybe a little high in my rating for it when it came out, because it's hilarious. It's really funny. That doesn't always make a movie a great movie. Right. And I think that's where the audience comes in with their reaction to this, is that it is funny. Barry Allen's really funny in this movie. I laughed a lot watching this movie. That doesn't mean I'm emotionally invested in this character. I still don't fucking know what Barry Allen's motivation in this movie is. I don't know what his deal with his parents are, because they try to rush the exposition for all of these characters so much that I literally could not understand what they were talking about when they say the one thing of like, oh, his dad killed his mom and he's in jail. But then there's like stuff after that gets lost in just like not being able to watch the movie with subtitles, because it's so fast. And so I think you said it's pretty bad audio mixing in this movie for a lot of the dialogue.
There's a lot of bad audio
the whole
mixing,
Aquaman, like, they have literally one scene, and not even like the entire scene, just like one portion of one scene to kind of explain like, who is Aquaman, where does he come from? Right. And they try to rush this whole thing about like he's got a mom, and like she would have been the one that defended.
But like,
I can't even repeat it because I don't know what I heard. Like, it was just
thing.
It was so fast. It was not tied to anything in reality. It was just get the information out there so that we can say that we had exposition so people can understand Aquaman. But I still don't really understand Aquaman.
I think this ties in with what you said. You were talking about how you'd like a Justice League movie where, oh, here's the Justice League, and it just is, you know? Yeah, sort of like Spider-Man Homecoming, where we already know their backstories.
Yes, exactly.
We just jump into it.
We don't need to hear about Uncle Ben. We don't need to hear about,
right.
Exactly.
So
right.
we
go
but
in media res.
But I think for like Aquaman and Flash and stuff like that. It's not like Batman's parents dying or Uncle Ben dying, where it's been explored so much in film, much less the comics, that it's kind of general knowledge. Like,
okay,
we know that's part of his. What is there about Batman? His parents are dead. He's an orphan, and he's rich. What is there about Superman? He was sent to Earth by the Kryptonian parents or whatever. That's stuff that we know about those characters, and they're incredibly iconic characters. Flash and Aquaman, not so much. And Cyborg, even less so.
I'd say Flash has become pretty popular with the whole TV show and everything as an example, but I agree with the Aquaman.
But if you haven't watched the very recent TV show, like within like the last 3 years that it's come out,
the
Flash show doesn't have a high viewership.
Like Aquaman,
it's on CW.
Like no one knows anything about Aquaman.
Yeah,
he's like Poseidon's son or something random like
James
that.
Cameron knows a lot about Aquaman.
I'll still
Vinny Chase knows Aquaman.
I'll still say, like, I've said this in reviews before, but the most realistic adaptation of comics is those CW shows. They're like, they seem cheesy and they seem like Gossip Girl or something, but that's what comics look like. And I hate that that's a critique of, like, this movie doesn't look enough like comics. Like, motherfucker, comics look really super stupid. Like, they're like one of the, like, comics would premiere on like the CW would be above comics. Like the CW would be like, no, I'm sorry, comics are too stupid to be on the CW. And it's just kind of like the Flash on CW is kind of like, yeah, okay, like it's just kind of like, and then you take it like a higher level of like Zack Snyder intelligence, and it's kind of like it's just so above all of that shit that it's just, comics are fucking stupid. It's just kind of like Thor Ragnarok had to change everything from comics of Planet Hulk to be like, this makes sense, right? Mm-hmm. You know,
if you want to see a comic book movie, just look at 2001's the Hulk movie. Yeah. You know, like it doesn't transfer over that well when you go full comic. Mm-hmm. It doesn't. So it's kind of about finding an in between. Like, what are people gonna like? What are the comic book people gonna like?
Yeah.
And then kind of going in between there. But I think this movie's kind of in the middle. I think, and if you just look at the viewer percentage, what did it get? 86% on Rotten Tomatoes from the viewers.
Yeah.
People like that kind of stuff. They're like, oh, let's be more like the Avengers. Let's be less gritty. And artistically, from an artistic standpoint, it sucks because I love Watchmen. I love Zack Snyder. I liked the gritty direction Batman vs. Superman was going with. But people don't like that in general. People just want to go, they want to see Batman beat the shit out of people, and they want to crack up in between. You know, they don't want this.
They want punchlines and Easter eggs. Like the biggest reactions I heard were to all of Barry Allen's punchlines. A lot of Batman's didn't land as much as they should have. Like even the people who probably liked this movie were not like.
I feel like there were a lot of weird Easter eggs in Batman vs Superman, like the fucking Duster coat and like Darkseid. Like,
this one didn't have a lot, but Deathstroke or whatever. Spoiler: it's in the credit scene. Whatever the characters.
I missed that. Crap.
There's 2 post-credit scenes.
Oh man, I missed them both. I didn't know they did that with DC.
You didn't miss much.
I thought that was a Marvel thing.
Oh, it's all movies.
Damn it.
They had one after like Kong Skull Island, I think.
Oh my god.
Oh, did they?
They might have. I mean, because they're trying to build that whole whatever universe. They had the first one, which was like really fan servicey, and it was like the Flash challenging Superman to a race, and he agrees, and it's way too long. We don't actually get to find out who wins, which is the part that I hated about it most. Like, if you're gonna do that, like, where's the punchline? Like, it's just, here's a premise. Not going to follow up on it. And then the last one, it's a more traditional post-credit scene because it's what's going to happen in the next movie, and it's the Jesse Eisenberg Lex Luthor character is like masterminded his way out of prison, Arkham, wherever they keep him.
Classic.
And he's on like a yacht, and he gets is it Deathstroke or I confused Deathstroke and Darkseid. I think it's Deathstroke and Darkseid. I want to say Deathside, but it's not.
Deathstroke is the guy with the mask.
It looks like Deadpool,
like orange and black. Yeah.
I guess I never read any comic. He's an American alien, but I didn't even really.
So
pick
which
up on
one
that.
was this then? This was
Deathstroke.
This was Deathstroke with the mask.
Yes, the assassin
played by who plays that guy?
Joe Manganiello.
Oh, okay.
The guy from Magic Mike. He's in How I Met Your Mother. I forget. Is it Jason Segel's friend or?
Yes.
He's like the dumb friend.
He's he's also in Magic Mike, and he does like this weird like lap dance in a parking lot kind of like he's very charming, really.
But yeah, you don't see. I just know that from the credits. You don't see him in it, but he shows up, and Lex Luthor's like, we should have a league of our own. He literally says.
Yeah, they're in a very like picturesque location in a yacht, and I don't mind that really. I was just,
my point being that the biggest reactions I saw were to the punchlines and that like my theater literally like gasped, and all these like guy. I mean, I was literally seeing it Thursday night, so it's like the absolute opening night of the movie. So clearly, the people who really care about it are seeing it then. But there was a lot of dudes just being like, Deathstroke! I literally heard a guy who was like, I've been waiting so long for this. And I was like, have you really? So my fear being that I think why a lot of the Marvel movies work is because they do jam pack it full of like punchlines. And that's fine if you're going to follow it up with heart and actual plot and character development and stuff like that. And they also jam pack it full of like Easter eggs to the other Marvel movies. Like, here's what Thor and the Hulk were doing while we were doing Civil War. It's essentially what Thor Ragnarok is. It's like a big Easter egg of like, that's why they weren't in Civil War. Mm-hmm. They were doing their own thing, forming their own club. So I just hope all movies don't kind of buy into like, I think with movies, the customer isn't always right. The audience doesn't always know what makes an actually good movie. They know what will get them to enjoy it, maybe. I still think there's a little bit more to it. You can make a good movie that's funny and has Easter eggs, but you can make a shitty movie that's funny and has Easter eggs too. I think that's what this is. Like, it's funny, it's got some Easter eggs in it, but it's still a shitty movie.
Yeah. And I mean, I think half of this, what the fuck, my fucking thing just disappeared. I think this movie really listened to the critics or whatever. I mean, this movie was really like, I think 2 hours, 1 minute or something. More than half of this movie was spent with like, we got to get a team together in exposition or whatever, and I really didn't get that much out of either of those things.
They didn't like it. It seems like it should be such an easy thing to write, like getting the team together.
Yeah,
but they really bungle it in this movie.
They should have done that in 15 minutes. They should have had the whole team together. Realistically, like 20 minutes.
No, because my complaint is not necessarily that it's too long. It's just that it does. I don't really buy it. It's not really engaging me at all. Like, you have like Barry Allen, who's just kind of like, yeah, I'll join. I think that's fine. That's a good punchline. If that's like the last guy to join after you've had like if you've had Cyborg and Aquaman have like a really hard time getting them to join. But we just don't really see the struggle of it all. And I also don't really know or buy why Batman's trying to get the team together. Like,
it's also like,
it's like the IMDb description says, like, how did they describe it? Fueled by his restored faith in humanity. Where the fuck was that in this movie? Yeah, I didn't get that character change at all.
Well, I think they alluded to that when he was like, Superman is more human than me, and he's pointing out the fact that he himself has been lacking a certain part of.
But that's like an hour and a half into the movie. That's like true, after he's got the team together.
That is later,
yeah.
But like that should be the motivation to like, I need people. I can't do this by myself. I need other people who are more human than me and understand society. Maybe him seeing like, oh, me and Superman could have been a really good team to fight evil, but I fucking killed him. So now I got to go get all these other people.
So let's bring him back in the same movie. By the way, like. How stupid!
And I did really like the idea of Batman being the one who's like, yeah, let's dig up Superman's corpse, because that is that's very true to Batman's character of like, he's going to be the one to suggest the unpopular idea, to do the thing that no one else is willing to do, and to take this kind of like calculated risk that no one else thinks is worth taking. but I feel like they didn't really establish enough the fact that like they should have established more him having trouble getting the Justice League together, and then when they are like assembled, getting them to work together. Like they should have had like a more bungled attempt to stop Steppenwolf that was outside of like he's just a really powerful otherworldly thing. That was all I got from that scene, is like he's really powerful. It should have been more like we can't work together as a team, and then the idea should have been, well, you know what, I'll be the bigger man. I'll make this fucking huge morbid risk to like dig up Superman's body and like bring him back to life, because he's the one who can actually assemble the Justice League. We're not the Justice League when we're just 5 heroes, fighting individually. We're the Justice League when we're all fighting together, and he's the one who would be the actual leader of that. I wanted more of that, and I didn't get it.
Yeah, no. To jump back to just kind of like getting the team together point, but before we leave that, I really only laughed like twice during this movie, and once was when he again went to go see Aquaman before we really knew. I think Red Letter Media brings this up, but this is another argument that I have, is just kind of Jason Momoa or whatever. Like before he knows he's directly involved with this kind of like mother box, like his people are protecting the mother box or whatever. He goes to go see him because he knows he has like powers or whatever. But I did laugh during that one part where he's kind of like speaking his home language to the people, where he's kind of like, I'll take his $25,000 no matter what, kind of like, I don't have to step outside with him. I'll take his like money no matter what. But that angered me. Like what I laughed at, him speaking his home language to these people, angered me later during that film, because we never see that home language again when he's speaking like this home. Where is he?
I thought he was speaking in Swedish to those people.
He is. It's not.
Okay.
I mean, he's Atlantean.
He's not saying Atlantean. He's speaking Swedish.
You're right.
To those people.
He's speaking Swedish to these people. He has like this Atlantean kind of voice or whatever. But then, like later, he turns into this, my man, hey yeah, like
all right,
hell yeah, oh man,
booyah.
Yeah, oh booyah.
No, that's Cyborg.
No, that's Cyborg. Comes out of that is not part of his character at all. He's a very reserved character and says, oh booyah. Like,
I think that was part of the humor.
That's Cyborg's main line.
Getting the robotic guy.
I hated that fucking line.
I hated Cyborg in general, though.
Really?
I hated Jason Momoa's like character of my man. Like it was just like so like, especially after the Flash addresses, like, you know what? Maybe that's like the fist bump is like too
racially charged.
Yeah, racially charged or something. Jason Momoa goes like, "Hey, black guy, my man." Like it was just like I was like, "Oh no."
I see what you're saying, but I think they were trying to tune more into like he's this just macho man. Like that's why they have the fucking gratuitous scene of him chugging the entire bottle of whiskey before like diving into the, which looks really cool. That's a very Zack Snyder looking scene.
I think they made Aquaman. First off, I think he's the worst. Just in general, I think he's the worst superhero ever made. Because he just talks to fish.
They're gonna make a solo film of him next year.
I
don't want to see that.
But I'm saying in this movie, they made him pretty badass. Like I want to hear more about Aquaman.
I liked Aquaman in this movie because it was like this subversion of like he's this silly superhero who's like orange and green and like with a trident and like swimming around.
Right.
And they turned him in like to like the badass of the crew, and he's like the tough guy, and he's chugging whiskey. And like they even like, I like the little allusions, the kind of Easter egg moments they have where he's like, you can like talk to fish, and he has the one-liners like, well, like the water kind of does like the talking, like,
just like a bat.
Yeah, like I don't mind that stuff as much. I just hate that they didn't do enough exposition for him. And again, it's like they should have done these movies before we did the Justice League.
Well, yeah, because that's what the Avengers did.
Because I think the concept of this movie is not horrible, but it's like we haven't established these characters, so they're really rushing to establish, which I think they are great characters. I think Aquaman, I'm more interested in him in this movie than I am in Batman, Superman, or Wonder Woman after having their own Superman and Wonder Woman movies. Mm-hmm. I'm more interested in Barry Allen and Cyborg. I actually really liked Cyborg in this just because I think it was kind of a fresh take on like the new superhero, like a superhero who doesn't want to be a superhero to the point where he just wants to stay at home and not go outside and maybe even like kill himself. Like he's kind of got like this emo thing going on of like, why did you bring me back to life? And now why am I like a cyborg and I can't even control my powers? There was just a lot of fresh stuff that was going on that I thought was cool. And I thought he fulfilled a good role within the Justice League of being kind of like, because he's connected to the internet or whatever, like the nerdy character who, and that's why I thought that Booyah line kind of worked. Wasn't my favorite thing, but it's because like, yeah, that's like the nerdy guy being like, fuck yeah, like it's out of character for him, and that's why it kind of works.
But it is the cyborg major line, though.
Well, in real life he wasn't. He was like a football star.
No, he was a genius. They said he had a genius intellect.
But he had a football scholarship to USC.
But they also said in that like same sentence, they said he has a genius level intellect.
But I don't think he's a nerd though.
They want it every single way. They can't let this alone.
What?
Nothing. I can't stand this movie.
Say it.
It is. It's kind of like he's the best of both worlds. He's a nerd, but he's also a football like boy. Like he's an all-American kind of like football like scholarship boy, but he's got a genius IQ, which like he gets from the fucking like,
yeah, he didn't need the genius thing
he doesn't need the football thing either. Because only a third.
I think the football thing works.
Only a third of his face is like a fucking human. Like the rest of it is
the football
robot.
thing works for me on a character level because it's like if he had been like this jock and now it's like now I'm forced to just be the brains of the group. It's kind of like Jumanji, like putting like the big football guy in Kevin Hart's body. Well, that subversion worked for me.
He's got a Wi-Fi connection everywhere he goes.
But while we're talking about Cyborg, can we talk about his CG, like the CGI on Cyborg? Did that bother you guys as much as that bothered me?
It was whack, yeah.
It was like the worst thing.
It was like you knew that they were filming his face, but they weren't giving him enough of a neck for his body. So his face was always like, it looked like his body was always making his face do.
Couldn't they have made him less
Hey guys,
cyborg?
This is the second most expensive film made in U.S. and worldwide history.
Can we talk about like the CGI like Batman scenes? Like all the fighting scenes were like clearly CGI for Batman, and it looked so cheesy. And like they really fucked up a lot of the fighting scenes in this. That's why like when Joe was reading that the cinematographer was not the usual cinematographer, I was like, yeah, of course, because like if you look at like the fighting scenes, they're so choppy. Like they do it in a lot of, I've seen it in a lot of other movies, and it's just a sign of like a bad cinematographer who hasn't really adapted to working with like 3D environments and like, you know, kind of filming outside of what you're looking at that moment. They have all these scenes where like they'll have like some action happens over here, and then we kind of look at the character's face, and you can tell that the director is just being like, all right, stand still for like 3 minutes while we turn the camera around to make it, and then we'll speed it up and make it look smooth in post, and then you're going to go fight these guys over there. They did it for Wonder Woman a lot, and just all the characters in this movie, and it looks so shitty. Just like they're trying to make kind of like recreate like the Matrix feel of like, you know, we're filming in real time and we have 300 cameras to spin around this, but they're clearly doing it with like one camera and like stand still, keep that same emotion. We're going to spin the camera around and then we're going to fight over here. It looks so bad. All the fighting scenes. It took me out of it.
The most obvious scenes is when they bring Superman back to life and they all have to fight him because he's suddenly evil. I mean, again, we already touched on this. Why is he suddenly evil? No one really knows. And
well, that made sense to me.
But no, why is he suddenly evil? No one knows. Everyone's hypothesizing that you lose something when you die. Psych. He's the same now that he's met like
so
Lois Lane.
He's different.
Yeah,
it's the problem that he's all of a sudden becomes not different.
Well, that part makes. But when he's mad and angry when he wakes up, that makes sense to me.
That's more of somebody waking out of a coma and not knowing.
And even like Wonder Woman has the line where she's like, if he wakes up and the first thing he sees is you, like he's not gonna be happy.
I mean, I thought that was just as corny as when he's like, I recognize you, Batman, and like lifts him by his throat, and it's kind of like, why don't you recognize your superior, like authoritative, just sensibility of protecting the Earth? Mm-hmm. Why do you only recognize that you don't like Batman, who you were trying to like the entirety of BVS?
Well, again, like Shane was trying to say before, like it would make more sense if they had the storyline of like something from the mother box is like imparted on him, you know. Mm-hmm. something from this box has been handled by Steppenwolf and all these whatever fucking characters, like some part of that evil, or just something else, like something that kind of scrambles his signal a little bit, and he's just not the Superman that we know.
It was just kind of like Cyborg's like, oh, my suit's trying to shoot him. I missed. We should never talk about this again. And that's it. That's it. That's fucking it.
They do have other lines where they talk about his suit. That's like a fight between him and Aquaman. Is Aquaman being like, this guy can't even like fucking control his suit or whatever. I don't know how he says it, but it was addressed later.
But what is the result? I'm sorry. I might have not missed. I might have not caught.
I think it's just supposed to be part. Well, the suit is just. It's like this intelligence that's like, this person is feeling antagonistic towards me.
Right.
So when Superman is looking at them like angry, the suit is like, that's an enemy. I have to fight him. So then at one point, Aquaman is angry towards him, and the suit is like, oh, like it's like an enemy. Like, gotta fight him. The suit doesn't understand the nuances of human interaction.
And also, it's that Cyborg can't control his own suit yet. And I guess it's the same with Flash. Both of them are like having trouble controlling their own powers.
When does he try to fight Aquaman?
He doesn't.
It's not an actual fight. It's a verbal fight. It's where Aquaman's like, this guy's messing up, and Cyborg's like, fuck you, fish guy. More.
I think the suit does start sort of like posturing towards like Aquaman, like we're about to throw down. It doesn't turn into an actual fight.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I don't know. I wasn't really. I forget the point that I was trying to make. I wasn't like totally a huge fan of that kind of Superman's back alive and trying to fight everybody. I did kind of laugh, like, not gonna lie, that maybe that was the third time I laughed, is when the Flash was spinning around, like he was running a circle around Superman.
Were you laughing with or laughing at?
Maybe both. The Superman just starts turning his neck.
It looks, I like the concept, but again, it's filmed so cheesy, like just him like.
It was just
that slow turn, and you know where it's going, but it takes so long.
It took a little long, but I thought that was great. I thought that was awesome.
It's cute. It's funny.
It's like half. It's
just
really
the execution is not the greatest.
It wasn't just that. It was.
It's the look. It's the look on his face.
It's like all of the scenes with the Flash, I thought were really cool, and I thought that being like the number one out of all of them,
minus the jail stuff, because I have no idea what's going on.
Oh, that doesn't even count. That's just why does.
It could have been great if they took the time to explain that, because I think when you have like a comic character and then you insert a little bit of emotion into it, if it's done the right way, it hits harder, because you're like, oh, that's that funny guy, but now I'm feeling for him. But I still don't know, like, why is he talking to his dad after his dad murdered his wife? His mom.
That's actually, and I just know because it's like a backstory, but they say that he doesn't believe his dad murdered his mom, because his dad did not murder his mom.
Do you know that from the TV show? Or
I've heard I don't
they
actually
say that in the movie. Is that he doesn't?
He's trying to become a criminal defender because he doesn't believe his dad killed his mom. Part of the Barry Allen lore is that
he didn't.
It's like someone came back in time. I'm not a huge follower, but someone came back in time and murdered his mom and framed his dad for it.
If they say that, that's like one line that's rushed in this movie. It's not heard. It's not really given any weight.
Yeah.
That I'm sure. I'm not saying that the Flash character doesn't make sense. I'm saying that in the execution of trying to establish the Flash character, they skipped over some stuff, didn't execute it the right way, so that people like me who don't read the Flash comics, don't watch the Flash TV show, I enjoy his performance, but I'm just kind of like, I know there's an emotional chord here that I'm not hitting, that you guys wanted me to hit.
Honestly, I cringed at almost every Flash joke.
Yeah. Yep.
Really?
I cringed almost every single, I gotta eat pizza after I run so fast. Like, it was just
and he's
literally
gobbling the pizza.
Oh, yeah, not all of them were. That one's
like
not great.
J-Law level fucking jokes. There was only one Flash joke that I laughed at, and it was literally kind of like making fun of the movie itself, is when Wonder Woman and Batman are kind of discussing some sort of like, all right, well, we're going to approach this from this level, and we're going to go do this and this. And like, all the Flash has to say is, oh, wait, what? Like, kind of like, that's all I needed was just kind of him to just be the fucking audience of like, what the fuck are you guys talking about? Like, he was the,
chorus, yeah.
Yeah. He was the great chorus of like, I don't know what the fuck you guys are talking about.
I liked him digging the grave with Cyborg. Because I felt like that was the only
real
real bonding we got between any of the characters, and like that's what the movie is sort of like. They sort of have the weird relationship between Wonder Woman and Batman.
So weird.
Which is poorly established. Like,
They're
really only established by
I'm
like...
interested in her assets. Yes, you're definitely interested in her assets.
Oh, God. I hated Alfred trying to hook the two of them up.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's really no women around this mansion anymore. Like, okay.
I feel like the relationship with, like, Wonder Woman and Batman only works when it's, like, a love triangle between... him, her, and Superman.
Yeah.
It doesn't work with Superman's like in clearly a very loving relationship that can only end by death with Lois Lane.
Because everyone in Justice League except for Superman apparently is in love with Wonder Woman.
She's the only option.
She's literally because they literally have, what was it? The Flash lands on her. He saves her from something and lands on her, and then feels like really weird. There's this weird sexually like, oh my god, I touched a girl moment. Then they have Aquaman, who is like, oh, you're so strong and beautiful and fierce.
Yeah.
Then they have Cyborg, who is also like, he's smiling at her and like making cute flirty jokes at her. He does. No, he's like, yeah, just keep Fish Guy away from me. And he smiles at her and she smiles back at him.
Oh, yeah.
Like a few lines here and there, nothing serious. But every single guy character in that movie, except for Superman, is like tries to flirt or likes.
It's kind of like how,
in some way.
While watching this, I couldn't help but think about how like we have the Justice League, only one female superhero.
Mm-hmm.
There's only one in the Avengers, right? Am I missing one?
No, Scarlett Johansson. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like,
the witch, Scarlet Witch.
The only thing is in the Avengers, they don't have everybody flirting with Black Widow.
No,
because that would be fucking weird.
Yeah,
and it's weird that everyone's making a pass at Gal Gadot, and not everyone in the Marvel movies is making like. Not everyone's like, oh, I'm fucking jacking off to you, fucking right now, Gal Gadot. Or Scarlett Johansson. It's like in Marvel, not everyone's like. I just fucking like. It's weird that Tony Stark's not like. Ooh, I just made
like the biggest womanizer in the Marvel universe doesn't even make a pass at her because he recognizes that work is work.
Right, he's not like I made a holographic sex doll out of you and I fuck it every night. Like that's not what Tony Stark is doing. But Jason Momoa is like, oh yeah, I'll fucking jerk off to you every night. Oh,
so
honestly,
fierce.
the best part of Game of Thrones is that I got to rape beautiful women. Oh yeah, I said that in an actual press conference at Comic-Con. Oh yeah, my man.
Everyone forgot about that because of these abs.
I forgot about it.
Worked on me. He said that though.
I didn't.
That was a real thing.
That was a real thing. Also, his fucking, his tattoos look different in all the green screen scenes that they did in the reshoots. It's fucking...
I wasn't following where his tattoos were.
Oh,
yeah,
I was.
I think it's a little too specific.
Parts, there's, diamonds, and then some parts, there's, the diamonds are
I thought it was all just tribal.
He's the son of a god, dude. You know what? His tattoos change.
Yeah, I was just I'm looking at a literal picture of it now, and they're not even diamonds. They're fish scales, but they were diamonds. It's all over the fucking place. It was just kind of like I remember before seeing the movie, I saw the scene of I thought you dressed up like a bat. It was just kind of like
a bat.
Well, I have to help out Gotham. Well, I thought you dressed up like a bat. He was just kind of like, yeah, sometimes I do. And then it was green screen, him jumping backwards into a green screen. It was a fucking mess, this fucking movie.
We should probably start wrapping this up. I just want to touch on a few of the specifics that we probably didn't get into. They're kind of big talking points for this. How awful the villain is in this movie.
The villain's terrible.
Villain? What villain?
The CGI villain.
He's
video game cutscene
PlayStation 2.
Final Fantasy 7.
Yeah. Not even. What is Final Fantasy 7?
console is that?
What console?
PS1. PS1.
Yeah, no, no, he's PS2.
It's just like,
but the bug people, like, honestly, we saw that in Batman vs Superman. They're trying to save face in this, in Justice League, and like they're just so stupid. It's just kind of like that whole like first scene after the credits is just like, oh my god, this fucking movie is so stupid. It was just kind of like, Superman on an iPhone screen that was stupid. A flag that was manipulated to have the Justice League text on it, and then it went to the crazy credit scene that reminded me of the Watchmen, and then it went to Batman solving like a crime on the rooftop of like, hey, you're a villain and I'm catching you, but really you're the bait for one of these insect people that I'm trying to catch.
They smell fear.
And it was so fucking crazy and stupid all at the same time. And the bug people were just kind of like, there's no real purpose to them. They're not individuals. They're just kind of like this proposed kind of, just kind of like, if you kill like 1 million of them, it doesn't matter. They're not like individual
the
people.
foot soldiers.
No. It's just kind of like, we never really established. They all kind of look the same. They're all insects. You kill 1 million of them every day to protect your house, kind of. It's the fucking accumulation of just like, hey, what do we kill like 1 bazillion of? And it doesn't matter. Oh, insects. Like, it was just fucking annoying to me. It was just stupid.
I just feel like they also, like, we've talked in this podcast about how like Marvel has sort of learned from their mistakes of the past, and sort of they've been more cognizant of like superhero fatigue and been, let's move forward from the big blue light in the sky that's going to destroy the entire world.
Which is this?
And that's like, DC is like late to the game, but is not even able to take like, they haven't learned the lessons that Marvel has done from all these movies and been like, what can we do better than Marvel that Marvel had mistakes with earlier in their movies? Big blue light, literally a big blue light in the sky every time the sky comes down, and he wants to terraform the world, which, as Red Letter Media said, is the plot of Man of Steel with the whatever that character's name is, the Michael Shannon character, Zod,
yes. Which honestly everyone calls the three boxes the MacGuffin of this movie. I think the true MacGuffin of this trilogy is the fucking spaceship, where they're just kind of like, like, we're gonna create it's Zod comes out of this spaceship.
Where can we go to have access to alien technology? The Zod spaceship.
Mm-hmm. And then Lex Luthor goes to the Zod spaceship to create Doomsday. And then, like, how did they bring back Doomsday? They go to the Zod spaceship to, bring back Superman. That's the MacGuffin, motherfucker. The honestly, like, all critics have forever made fun of, like, even before superhero movies, all critics have made fun of, like, all villains are, like, searching a box, In this movie, it's just kind of like, the villain's searching for, like, 3 boxes. It's fucking stupid. And then they also have this MacGuffin of how they bring back Superman, and it's just even more stupid. I don't know.
And there's just no motivation. Like, I can't...
It's just...
I have more... it's like a cliche that, like, I hate that we're starting to see a lot of now, but I would rather they have done the villain that's like, oh, like, my vision for a better world is by doing this evil thing. Like they even have that. They have that with the they have that with the first villain in this, the like Chicago gangster in the Boston. Yes. I think they're in Boston. I don't know what city Wonder Woman protects.
Yeah, let's just call it Boston.
I fucking hated that scene because it was so clearly Joss Whedon having, like, even the soundtrack is different in that scene where it's like dun 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 dun, like this fucking like single line like piano note like run that Danny Elfman is doing. It's so out of character with the rest of the movie. The fighting in that scene is so light and bright and different compared to the rest of the movie. It feels like a 90s like movie, like intro to a Justice League thing.
They didn't know how to put Wonder Woman into this movie, honestly. They did market research of, hey, people liked Wonder Woman.
When I think they had
I knew a man who was a pilot once.
They had so many fucking callbacks to Wonder Woman and Steve Trevor. There was like 2 or 3 different ones. It ended up becoming a major plot point of like Batman having to apologize for insulting Steve Trevor.
I'm not Steve Trevor, but it was just so stupid.
And then in that fucking horrible like gangster scene where the guy's wearing like a fedora and a suit as he robs a bank, which it might as well fucking like Tommy guns and shit that he was robbing the bank with.
Yeah.
And then like he's trying to shoot or whatever, and then he's like, I don't believe it, and she's like, I believe. Which is like a callback to the horrible fucking line that I hated from Wonder Woman of, I believe in a thing called love.
I think she was in Europe.
In that scene?
Yeah.
It looked kind of European.
Yeah. It was very European, the bank robbery, but yes.
He wasn't European.
Oh, okay.
He didn't sound European.
I think he was American.
Okay.
I got a very like American 1940s vibe. Even though they're in the modern day age.
I don't know. Like when she was restoring like a fucking statue or whatever, you know.
But we don't know that's the same spot though.
Yeah, I really don't fucking know.
I mean, she could have been in Europe. She was left in Europe. Who knows?
Yeah,
she's in office in
which
Europe,
is weird
really, yeah.
because she's an American. Like the outfit is very clearly like American. At least she was created to be like an American superhero.
I love how all the Amazon women kind of in this film have like, instead of like full body kind of like armor, they all have bikinis.
I saw that, but a lot of them do have the full breastplates though. I mean, there's definitely some that have the bikinis, yes. But they were very selective in those like memes that were like, here's what Wonder Woman, the ultimate feminist movie did, and then here's what, you know, Justice League, the fucking dog pile of shit did. But a lot of them have the full breastplates in this.
But
I don't understand the justification why they all don't have it.
Yes, exactly. Yeah,
but they're being very selective in what they're showing.
That's kind of like why didn't they stay? Why didn't they stay with all the? Why does some have bikinis and why does some not?
I don't know.
Well, the ones with the big hammers had some bikinis because they also had 6-pack abs.
Kind of like, I don't need to protect my innards. Like
it did seem to be the more important ones had the full breastplates. But that's just a weird choice to like. Why do we have to get into the sociology of like?
Why does some need to look hot?
It's the same reason why they show Gal Gadot.
Why are some more worth protecting than others? Like in this society, like that's too deep. Like I don't care for this like 5-minute scene. Keep them all in the full breastplate.
And along that line, why did they? I mean,
they don't have men on the. I mean, I can go into a whole thing. They don't have men on the island, so they don't have the wandering male gaze. They're not ashamed of their nudity. She's not ashamed when Steve Trevor is naked. You know, it's just like you know, they don't care about it, but that from our perspective, it's a weird. Just keep it the same. Keep it the same.
It's a dumb decision.
Keep it just for continuity's sake. Keep it the same between the movies.
Yeah. They just wanted to show the sick chicks with hammers with 6-pack abs.
Exactly.
They just wanted to do that.
Exactly.
Which is fine.
Yeah.
I mean, as a man,
I hated going back to the island to begin with. To be honest, it's in the beginning, and they're like jumping around so much, like
it's honestly,
Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, the Amazon island.
Honestly,
blah, 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 like
there's going to be a. Like Shane said, there's going to be an Aquaman movie next year. It's already slated, yada, yada, yada. The most boring part of this fucking movie is them fighting underwater.
It's all like, so slow. I'm coming for you.
Like, it was
nobody can talk.
Slow
even though
motion.
they're Amazonian.
They're
Atlanteans, but they have to like create this like fucking like tidal pool or whatever to talk inside of the oxygen of it.
The most appealing part was like 0.2 seconds where like his love interest and the camera was like looking down her like bra, like her metal bra basically, and it was kind of like there's kind of a down like top shot, like, and that's it. That was it. That was the most. It was just kind of like the fight scene took like 2 minutes. And, like, even, like, the big baddie of, like, this whole movie was just kind of like, I can't fight underwater.
It's slow and I can't talk. It's like the BoJack episode.
It's fucking stupid. Yeah.
We really got to start wrapping this up. The only other specific thing that I wanted to talk about was just the like actual ending of this movie with the Lois Lane narration, which was so awful. There was this tweet from Scott Aukerman that I thought was great. I had thought this thought prior, but he worded it really well. Lois Lane's happy ending in Justice League is that she sits down to write the world's shittiest newspaper article. Like, I can't understand. I can't picture an article that she would be writing that would have that narration in it. Like, it's so clearly so vague, so unspecific and purposeless. And it makes even less sense in this movie where she has a conversation about, like, I'm sick of writing fluff pieces. I want to get into, like, the hard-hitting journalism. And then she fucking sits down to be like, you know what, let me get back into it. Love is great. We got to all be together, and fucking justice stands for... Like, it's just... None of it makes sense. It's all just fucking platitudes and bullshit and garbage. And, like, I enjoyed the first half of this movie. I think the ending is where I was really like, oh, okay. Like, I feel like this is probably what people saw in Batman vs. Superman that I didn't see. Like, it was just total garbage at the end. Between Superman's, like, fucking stupid punchlines, fucking Superman, like, pushing the apartment building, like, ahead of, like, the Flash, like, just the cheesiness of that ending, the fact that there was no stakes to it because they're in this, like, abandoned, like, chemical whatever town in Russia. They escaped all the citizens from it, so no one was in any real danger, and they were all just having so much fun beating up, like, the alien. They're like, no, what are you still laughing?
The alien never even had a chance of winning.
This is the whole thing.
It's bad. It's bad.
Movie, man. It's just
it had promise in the beginning. I was at least, like, entertained, but then like, the punchline stopped being funny at the end, and, like, it got to the point where it's like, oh, I get it. Like, Barry Allen's the only punchline you guys have to go to, besides the occasional, like, weird out of place Superman or Batman punchline. Like, Aquaman doesn't really have any punchline. Cyborg has zero. That's fine. Wonder Woman is not funny or really interesting at all in this movie.
Literally,
it was one of the worst endings to a movie.
The stakes couldn't be lower. We're on like the
foreign country in a place where nobody should be. There's like barely any citizens.
It's like a horror movie of like, what is that horror movie of like the nuclear reactor?
The Hills Have Eyes.
Chernobyl Diaries?
Yeah, the Chernobyl. Yeah. That's like where like the fucking shit, like everyone here already has like fucking terminal cancer. And like we're on like the brink of the entire planet being enslaved and or destroyed. We don't fucking know. And like there's negative characters dying, like people are being brought back from the dead.
It was very un-Zack Snyder to not have like a lot of like citizen shots and like stuff just kind of like, because that was all over the place in Batman vs Superman. Like, you know, what does the general public feel about these characters, or what is their sort of reaction to this? We got none of that in this. That's also a very Watchmen thing.
The only civilians you got were the ones in that shack who never even mattered.
That's what I was about to say. Nobody died in this film. Only one person was brought back. People were being resurrected in this film. It was a -1 death count.
They didn't even kill the villains.
Even
I'm back alive.
Even
nobody died in this film.
Not even the bad guy. Yeah. Not even the bad guy.
You didn't even get to see the bad guy die. It was just Superman.
It was like they took to heart, like, extremely the criticism of Batman vs Superman of like, too many people died in that movie, which like was already supposed to be a reaction to too many people die in superhero movies.
It was in the scene you were talking about when it was just kind of like, the Flash saved somebody in a pickup truck. Superman saved an entire apartment complex. Like that was like a reaction of, no, he was actually fighting Steppenwolf, and he said, the citizens.
I gotta go save the real people.
Yeah, exactly. That was an exact like literal scene of just kind of like the critics. They said, I'm destroying.
Too many people died.
Too many people? I gotta go. Like, and it was just kind of like, hey, Flash, can you help me save all these people that the critics care about? got an apartment, I got an entire apartment
That was
complex.
so cheesy because it was just like completely perfectly horizontally moving across. It was
It was
I hated that.
It was like even fighting Steppenwolf. It was just kind of like, oh man, we can't fight him. And then Superman shows up, and he's just kind of like,
I'm the only one who can fight him. Let me go get the citizen.
No, he was just
what the other people
hit
could
him
do.
one time.
He was just kind of like, I put 15 cheat codes in Injustice, and he can fucking pound fucking. Like Steppenwolf was like, man, I fucking tried, dude, but this guy can fucking fight me with 2 hands tied behind his back.
He literally blew on me.
Yeah, he literally. Like,
I hated the scene where he was blowing the cold air.
Yeah.
That looked bad. It felt bad. It was.
It was just kind of like, oh hey, Wonder Woman. Like, that's really sad that you have a sword. Like, let me help you. Like, it was just, it was this whole movie's a fucking wreck, man. I fucking hate this movie, dude.
My score has been influenced by this rage fest. Let's get into let's get out of here. On review aggregation website Rotten Tomatoes, the film has an approval rating of 39% based on 228 reviews, with an average rating of 5.3 out of 10. The site's critical consensus reads, Justice League leaps over a number of DC movies, but its single bound isn't enough to shed the murky aesthetic, thin characters, and chaotic action that continue to dog the franchise. God damn, I love Rotten Tomatoes synopses.
They do. Yeah, they do a great job.
They always have like a nice little like nod and wink to whatever the subject material is. I can go first if you guys look dumbfounded. I did love some parts of this movie. I think Flash is genuinely entertaining to watch. I think Aquaman is good in concept in terms of the subversion. He's fucking nice to look at. And it's just a cool character. I'm interested, and I think
he's a hot boy.
Yeah, and that's fine. They don't all have to be like the most deep characters in this movie. And I was kind of intrigued by Cyborg's like, you know, I can't control my suit. I don't even really want to be a superhero. Was less intrigued by the way that they brought him into this because they didn't really have a whole lot of progression in that. I wish they spent more time on that. But just from the initial characters, I thought there was material there that I enjoyed. And then I really hated some other parts of this, just in terms of pretty much every scene Batman was in, which like I thought he was a strength of Batman vs Superman. He's a total weakness in this. I think the concept of Superman coming back in this is great, but I think all the scenes that Superman's actually in, besides that first fight scene when he's back, are a detriment to the movie. And I think the ending like really fucking kills it. And then that Wonder Woman opening, as I've already ranted about, I just think is god awful. Out of place in this movie, out of place in really any movie. It's stupid. It's so dumb.
It's like they have the Wonder Woman movie, which, I mean, aside from, you know, how you feel about it, I mean, I feel positively about the Wonder Woman movie, and they don't.
But this wasn't what worked in the Wonder Woman movie.
No, they don't know how to place the Wonder Woman movie in this movie at all. She's completely useless in this movie. There is just zero. There's zero.
There is a version of this storyline that I think they had in there. I can see like ghosts and glimpses of it, like where the entire sort of concept of like, you know, Superman is kind of like, you know, like the face of the team who like he goes and defeats these bad guys, and then he goes and talks to reporters, and I think that's what him talking to the kids is supposed to get. Like I think that's probably where sort of Zack Snyder's idea of this movie was, and there's supposed to be a storyline of Wonder Woman, like that's kind of her drive in this movie, is like, you know, when I've gotten involved, people have gotten killed. She says as much in this.
Yes.
But we don't really get that from that first scene. She just kind of fights and she's gone. And they needed to sort of express to us that like people wanted to talk to her. People wanted to see Wonder Woman as this like beacon of hope, and she just kind of fights and she's out of here.
There's no reason for
we get it at the end when she fights, and then she's like, all right, let me like, you know, talk to whoever and kind of do like the press as like a superhero at the end. And that's not a horrible character arc for this movie, but it's just so weirdly established in this.
But honestly, and you're probably going to disagree, but I thought the intro of the Wonder Woman movie was a lot more powerful than the intro of this movie.
What was the Wonder Woman intro?
I don't even remember that.
She's like in Italy, and she's in like her office or whatever,
Oh.
and
She's writing a note.
and Batman.
She's sending flirtatious notes to Batman.
Right, yeah. But that's like the shit that I was talking about
Batman's
earlier.
like,
What
what are you doing?
But no, that's
up?
that's the shit I was talking about. Like, that's the fucking Justice League shit I grew up on.
Which part of it?
Just that she's in like this big kind of like center, you know, where she's kind of, you know.
I guess she
writing-
is in Italy because she's at the art place or somewhere in Europe. Yeah,
Right,
when she's now that
she's at a big and important place writing notes to Batman, kind of, and Batman's in his own kind of like big important place writing notes back and forth or whatever, and just kind of like in this movie we're just really like I don't know, it's just stupid.
Mm-hmm.
Continue with your
Anyway, just I think my overall like general complaint is I think this movie wasn't Zack Snyder enough. I think there's no reason to have.
They erased Zack Snyder.
They took all of his strengths out of this movie, and then you just get an even worse movie than if you had just let Zack Snyder direct it on his own. Like I think this is a way worse movie than Batman vs Superman. Again, that's coming from someone who liked Batman vs Superman, while also recognizing it had problems. But I think like there's just no reason to have him on this if you're not going to let him do what he does best, and if you're going to push him to do stuff that he doesn't do well at all. You know, he's not a fun director, and they tried to push this in this like fun direction. And like I understand like inserting fun, inserting jokes, inserting punchlines, punching a movie up, but you also have to find a natural blend for that in the movie that you already have that you're punching up. You can't just throw punchlines in a sort of dark storyline, dark visuals, and then just color correct it in post. It just looks bad. And all the scenes that I think I can pretty much safely attribute to Joss Whedon, I didn't like. And that's also fine because, like, you know, he's brought on like at like the 11th hour to like fix this movie in the studio's eyes. But I just think it was a bad decision to bring someone else on at all, or at least someone who wasn't willing to follow Zack Snyder's vision for this movie. I think I sort of equally loved and hated it. I think if they had found a good marriage of the parts that I loved and hated, it might be a 2.5. But I think it's a below average movie because they could. The parts were not working well together. And then I think after that rant that we had at the end, I realized how much I really hated the ending of this movie, and I was probably just carrying positive feelings forward from having some good feelings about the beginning of the movie and kind of just falling victim to the funny lines of Barry Allen, as much as his character isn't really too well established in that. So I'm going to give it 1.5 fingers. So actually well below average. It's okay.
Take your time. Yeah, I didn't think I was gonna go second. But I don't think I've said much positive about this movie. I said that I laughed twice, and it was during these 2 different times. You know, I think the Barry humor worked once, and I don't remember what I said worked again. I think this movie was terrible from the get-go. It was just scene after scene after scene after scene after scene that it was just kind of like, oh my god, this movie just doesn't make sense at all. Even as somebody who's seen all of the films that are needed to be seen, I think that they took Zack Snyder's, literally the most accurate thing I have to say is that I think they took Zack Snyder's envision of this movie and just gave it like a lobotomy, and like that's what I watched. Like it was just stupid. Like I liked the direction that Batman v Superman was going, and I think it wasn't done properly, and then they just made it worse. They fucking EA, you know, like they took the EA course, and they really just kind of like gave into they took the Destiny course, you know, like the Bungie course, where they were just like, you know, people don't like this, so we're just changing it. They didn't really give into, or they just gave too much into like the audience vision, which is sometimes problematic. I don't know.
The customer is not always right.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
I mean, the customer knows that something's wrong, but they don't always know exactly what it is that's wrong. You know, so when you have the audience looking at BVS and going, "It wasn't funny enough. It was too dark." That was never the problem with the movie. You know, Christopher Nolan's movies were very dark with the Batman. Not very dark, but certainly darker than Marvel movies with Batman.
There was so much.
The problem was they made sense.
Right. They took Christopher Nolan's movie and they like comedically, like as if it was some sort of like college film students project, color corrected it into something very bright. And the first act was kind of a joke. The third act was a fucking joke. Superman was a fucking MacGuffin. All three of those boxes were a MacGuffin. The fucking Zod's ship was a MacGuffin. It was just kind of like everything was like this plot device. And I don't like Joss Whedon. I don't like his contribution to the Avengers. He's like this false feminist, and I don't want to take that too permanently into his writing, but I don't fucking like what he did with I think he made maybe one of the worst Marvel movies, which is the fucking what is the one where they all go back to the where they have the robot?
Ultron.
Age of Ultron. And he directed.
Probably the worst.
He wrote and directed that, and like it's obvious that he wrote like a lot of these scenes too, especially like when Superman came back and all this bullshit, and even like when DC Comics failed and wrote when like Superman came back, it was stupid and fucking ridiculous. And you can watch like a whole Max Landis like video essay on it, and it's really great. It has like Elijah Wood in it, and it's really great and stupid, and it's like this accumulation of why comic book companies like just want your money, and they don't want anything else. They don't care about story or anything else. And I felt like they used the product of Superman dying, and they didn't even give it the justice of him being brought back. Like, I really love the Flash and Cyborg digging up like the grave. That was like the only scene in this movie that I really liked. I don't really know where I'm going with this whole fucking rant.
Well, them like digging it up like sort of gave a little bit of weight to like, yeah, like this is morbid. Like you're digging up Superman's body. It should be sort of like a dark thing, and that's why it should have been like Dark Superman after
that. But they made it funny. Because they were like
that's funny,
banter back and forth.
That's fun. I think the punchlines during that scene are funny because it's kind of like winking to the audience, like, yeah, like we're doing this really fucking dark thing, like we're grave robbing right now. Superman, like one of like the biggest like iconic figures, you know, in this society, even our own society, you know, Superman.
But Superman should be in a suit, a Superman suit that's all black, and he should be, you know, kind of standing or sitting.
I don't know why he's not buried in the Superman suit,
or just sitting like, you know, on top of like a pyramid of skulls because of like the sins that he's committed and all this like really dark shit that like I think, you know, should have really been like that Zack Snyder really like committed. It's just this fucking Frankenstein project, and I fucking hate Joss Whedon, and I really love Zack Snyder, and I can hate what Zack Snyder does. I don't know. I'm just gonna cut myself off. I'm gonna give this a half a finger. I really didn't like this movie. It was honestly a chore to sit through. I expect better of DC.
We're disappointed in you.
Mm-hmm.
We're not angry. We're just disappointed.
It's just kind of like I gave Suicide Squad a higher score than this, but I expected less of Suicide Squad.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't want to over-explain myself. This deserves a half a finger, and that's that. I'm gonna pass it to Shane.
All right, I'll take the mantle here. I'd like to start by saying, Jesus Christ, I did not think you guys were gonna hate this movie that much. Oh my god.
I'm sorry, I really went off on a fucking tangent.
I came in here expecting you to actually like it more than Batman versus Superman, and I thought this is a total like flabbergast to me.
Yeah.
You guys just fucking hated this movie. That being said, I think this movie fixed up certain things that were wrong with Batman versus Superman. Like how it was just all over the place, and there were so many scenes that just you're like having trouble following this. Like, why is this happening? Mm-hmm. I liked that this was more straightforward. It's a comic book movie. It's supposed to be more straightforward, and I don't think it suffered from the same problems that Suicide Squad had as an example. Suicide Squad had like 10 different characters that they tried to get way too much backstory into.
Right.
I liked the fact that I barely know anything about Aquaman. I barely know anything about The Flash or Cyborg. I liked the fact that they were kind of flat characters. I liked their personalities, and I didn't feel like I needed to have an emotional connection to like them. That being said, this is kind of like they got caught in this twilight zone where it's half Zack Snyder's Dark Universe, and let's shoehorn these funny moments where Superman's throwing in these punchlines like, I guess I'm Superman now.
Yeah.
Or, Batman's making weird comments like, oh, my leg's definitely broken. Like, You don't choose one or the other. Like, bring us in a totally bright direction or bring us in a dark direction. They're kind of stuck in between. But all of that being said, I liked the movie. It was entertaining all the way through. There were definitely a lot of flaws, and there were some cringy moments that made me laugh out loud. Like Batman's, did you notice his bat goggles when he was driving around in the vehicle? He just has on these stupid goggles that they have little things in between.
I thought that was
his night owl. His night owl.
His night owl goggles.
I forgot that he's in a duster in the flash forward in BVS. So I thought it was supposed to be a Easter egg to, or a throwback to.
He looks like Night Owl,
or like the
Night Owl, yeah,
or like the Nightcrawler device in general, and why that has nothing to do with anything, and who would even make that. There's just like a whole bunch
what was it? Where was he like? Finally, we need to use the Nightcrawler.
It's just been in his basement.
What was
for
the
30
original
years.
idea for that?
It can crawl up stuff. I think I don't know. It just seemed like there was definitely a lot of problems with this movie, but I'd have to say, on the whole, I was entertained. I really liked Aquaman. I thought he was a super badass character.
He's hot.
He was hot as fuck. Fucking, let me see that. I wanted to see Khal Drogo hang dong.
I see that aqua dick.
Yeah, I'm sad I didn't see that aqua dick, but what are you gonna do? Fucking better than Ezra Miller was okay. He was fine. He was kind of funny. I guess he added a little humor to it. Some of it was cringy, some of it wasn't. I don't know. It was entertaining. Like, as a whole, it definitely had a lot of flaws, but it had less cringy moments than Batman versus Superman. If I wasn't entertained, then I was just, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
There were very few points, I should say, where I thought, man, this fucking sucks. I was entertained, thoroughly entertained. You'd put me, if I was a fan, put me in the 86% of the critics or the fans' Rotten Tomatoes. That's where I'd be. There was no point where I was bored. There was no point where I was angry, like, oh, you should have done this and done that. There are definitely flaws with it, but I think they fixed it up for Batman versus Superman. I think they cleaned it up a lot. and I think they're bringing it in a better direction. So overall, I'd give it 3 stars, 3 thumbs.
Fingers, god
3
damn
fingers.
it.
3 fingers.
3 thumbs.
Shit!
I'll give it 3 thumbs. 3 toes, 3 chicken fingers.
Hold on, I gotta copy.
So I'm gonna round up your terrible scores. Jesus Christ, this is gonna bring it down to 2.1 or something.
It's gonna go to 1.6 repeating, which will round down to 1.5 fingers. So you can't save it too much.
That's rough.
So 1.5 fingers from How Many Fingers, a podcast.
I should have given it a 5.
Officially, pretty much right in line with the Rotten Tomatoes score as well. But yeah, let's wrap up this real quick. If you agree or disagree, if you're like me and Joe, who gave it a below average score, or Shane, who gave it above average, leave a comment below on SoundCloud, YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, wherever you're listening, reading, watching, absorbing our material. We'd love to hear from you guys. Continue the conversation, as we always say, about the episode. And Shane, let's get some links for The Few and the Far before we hop out of this episode.
Okay.
Facebook.com/The Few and the Far, New Jersey. NJ.
The Few and the Far. No, it's The Few and Far.
Few and Far.
Not 2 of those, just
NJ.
the one. Facebook.com/The Few and Far NJ.
Okay.
That's gonna be our main link. That's the thing.
And what's the album that's at now? The Blurred EP?
Blurred EP.
Blurred EP.
It's on Spotify. Just type in Blurred.
Check out Blurred. Check out
Blurred
Spoons.
EP.
Both good
Spoons.
songs.
Check us out.
As for us, you can find pretty much everything HowManyFingersPodcast.com. This was a real long episode, so I'm going to keep that brief. Pretty much everything can be found at that website right there. And signing out for How Many Fingers a Podcast, I'm Mike.
I'm Joe.
And I'm Shane.
I don't know what to say to that.
Well, yeah.
He's not wrong.